All right, you're live.
Mayor, you're muted right now.
You are right. Thank you. We are out of executive session. No votes were cast. No action was taken. Moving on to item 6, there was no action from executive session. On to number 7, adoption of minutes. First, we have the Town Council regular meeting minutes of April 14th. If there are no changes, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. And if there's any discussion, all in favor, state by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That's unanimous. Next, I'm not going to do a roll call vote for the minutes, if that's okay. We can just all sound. Next are the special meeting minutes of April 23rd, 2020. If there are no changes, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That's unanimous. Followed by the Town Council special meeting minutes of April 28th, 2020. If there are no changes, is there a motion to accept?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? That was Bridget and Larry, Kim. All in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. And finally, the Town Council special meeting and work session minutes of April 30th, 2020. Is there a motion to accept?
So moved.
The bird's accepted. Is there a second?
Second.
Is any discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. We have several presentations, celebrations, and recognitions. We have 3 proclamations, which are all very important. Since they are not here to be able to accept it, we've written the proclamations and we've sent them on to the appropriate groups. The first is Kids to Park Day. We do this every year. Worthy Calls. National Mental Health and Substance Abuse Awareness Month proclamation. And this time, I think it's very important for us all to take note of our mental health. That has been forwarded on to the group. And the National Preservation Month proclamation was also sent. So those proclamations are on our website and can be read if you'd like more details. Next is the item 4 is Hilton Head Island Bluffton Chamber of Commerce, our Bluffton marketing plan and FY 21-22 budget as the town's designated marketing organization. Ariana is up, and I would ask all of us to mute, which we all are except me. So Ariana, you're up.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having us this evening. I'm joined by Ray Deal, who is our controller here at the Hilton Head Island Bluffton Chamber of Commerce. Mayor and Town Council, thank you for your time. Tonight, I want to share with you our efforts for the 2020-21 DMO marketing budget and marketing and PR efforts. And with that, if you'll allow me, I'm going to share my screen. Apparently it's saving, excuse me, there we go. And again, as we mentioned, we're walking through the 2020-2021 Town of Bluffton marketing plan. As we always like to start, we talk about what we're really charged with, our vision and mission, as well as overarching what drives us every single day. And that is to keep the community first and foremost top of mind as we promote in our out markets all those assets that draw not only our community to this destination, but also all of our visitors. It's what we love day in and day out. I think we'd be remiss if we did not talk about the current pandemic, and I won't spend too long on this detail, but I think it really sets the frame of where our requests and efforts kind of lie for the overall 2020-21 budget. So if you will allow me 1 minute or so to talk about COVID. As a national overview, the impact that COVID-19 has had on the travel industry as a whole is quite staggering. If you look through this slide, the impact of COVID at this moment is 9 times the impact of 9/11. If you look at economic loss as a whole to date, it's 1.2 trillion. They're anticipating 519 billion, in direct travel spending loss, and the staggering number of 8 million in total unemployment loss. Those numbers will continue to grow as we work through this pandemic and work to reopen our cities when it is safe. And we just talked about that staggering number of 8 million. Locally, that number is staggering as well. When we look at how it's impacted locally, and we look through thousands at this point of jobs lost throughout Beaufort County. We've had over 3,000 at the highest point of applications submitted to the Beaufort County Department of Employment and Workforce. The week at its highest was the week of 3/21 through 4/4. We've had 2.8 billion approved in small business loan applications, of which I should say SBA loan applications, of which 14,300 were small business customers. And when we look at total units across the area, the landscape of Southern Beaufort County, inclusive of Hilton Head, but also talking about our backyard as well in Bluffton with Palmetto Bluff, we've had over 1,700 keys or units available each and every night because the properties were closed. And then in terms of our outreach into the community to ensure that we are meeting the needs of our community during this tough time, we have provided, in partnership with many of you, over 5,000 plus meals through Help for Hope. So as we look at those numbers and then we look forward to what 2021 might bring us in terms of tourism and promotion, we wanted to at least have those numbers in front of you. In terms of budget and where we're overall looking to in terms of efforts and outreach, we are working with a total expense of $82,000. As you know, that's very different from years past. This number was worked together. We brought this number and working together with the town of Bluffton, as well as just our forecasting efforts and that we have in place to help us understand what we're anticipating for Q1 and Q2 of this coming fiscal year. The way that we're breaking apart $82,000 and it will apply into the business of promotion, tourism promotion, is through several efforts here that I've listed. So SEO and social media, a year ago, about a year and change ago, we made a commitment to promote the town of Bluffton, starting with social media first. And when we look at social media and the power that it has across the many different channels that we all probably utilize, inclusive of Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, and many others that we're working with, that is our main channel of promoting the town of Bluffton and getting additional followers and eyeballs into the destination to understand all the beauty and all the assets that we together are promoting. We couple that with our SEM and social media advertising. So again, that's the paid effort that goes behind when you look out at your social media and it says if you want to boost or promote something, that is that paid effort that goes behind it. It allows us to be a little bit deeper reaching in terms of curating that specific visitor that we're looking for. We also need to maintain and understand growth of the website. And again, when I say growth, it's the overall maintenance. If we wanted, day-to-day operations of keeping that website up, and that's visitbluffton.org. We want to make sure that that has all the most up-to-date information possible. It's promoting our different businesses and efforts in terms of festivals and events. Collateral and fulfillment really talk to the official vacation planner that has not only a print component and has been upgraded to a coffee style book, but it also has a digital component this year and that we are doing for the first time. We've always had a flip book component, but the digital component new to us this year really allows us to dive deeper into telling the story of not only the destination, but also helping us tell the story of our partners. And there's so many great stories, as you know. So it allows us an extension of a print piece that at times has seemed somewhat short in telling the story over and over. We can continue that with the digital version that we have in place. Research and planning, as we've held hands in our efforts to ensure that we have the richest and deepest information about our visitors and what those visitors bring to the destination in terms of impact. We will move forward with those efforts. And we want to support that with the numbers that we have there. That again will be in line with what we have in our contract. And then our ops and management. That brings us to $82,000. And I have additional slides, but I wanted to be respectful of the request to keep it towards budget. So.
This is presentation. We're going to be looking at the request here in ATAX. Does anyone have questions or want something more from the chamber? I'll ask Ariana. And in the past, we've had a nice book put together of all the things. Is that something we're going to see again? Or, I mean, this is probably one of the lightest presentations I've seen with no real backup. So I'll throw that out there and then I'll go through the line starting with Dan.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, we do have a full breadth presentation as well as the actual book itself, and that is currently in a flip book platform, but we absolutely will print it. But based on COVID-19, we did not move forward with the printing, but it has been delivered to your team as a flip book and available digitally, and you would read it just like you would a regular book, except online. And I'm happy to share a fuller presentation with you if needed to you or to the council as a whole. I have that detail if needed.
More of an insight from year to year, but we'll run down. Any questions from anyone? I'll start with Dan.
An observation, comment, Ariana. I was curious, since none of us really understand the true impact, and we've got so much time ahead of us we have to navigate through with travel, with airlines and car, driving distance and so forth. Will y'all be able to maybe give the town manager a monthly summary of what you find? In other words, airline activity, people that are actually starting to hit the hotels, coming to different locations, not just for Hilton Head, but any impact that you're seeing from your advertising on behalf of Bluffton?
Yes, Councilman Wood, I'd be happy to provide that starting by end of this week. I will have something to you.
Yeah, that will help us have an understanding as time goes forward of the impact, whether it's growing or not, as far as tourism.
Anything else, Dan?
No, ma'am.
Okay, Fred, anything on this?
Nothing for me.
Okay, Larry, anything from you?
Yeah, just one quick question, if I may. Do we have a comparison as to where we were 12 months ago with this, just say total, not breaking it down into categories, but where we're looking at 82,000 today? What was that number 12 months ago at this same time of year?
Right. I have Ray Deal on here, but our overall budget was $200,000 for the town of Bluffton for this past fiscal year.
Yeah, so again, Ray Deal, Chamber, 200,000 was the budget for fiscal 20 that we're in. In fiscal 19, we ended the year at 204,000. When we first did the budget in February, the budget was about 225,000, but obviously with what happened, we went back and revamped the budget, and that's where we came up with 82,000. We're looking at, over the next 4 quarters, 15%, 40%, 60%, and 75% respectively of accommodation taxes collected. That's how we came up with 82,000.
So this is, the 82 is for the quarter, or this is for
The year.
the entire?
82,000 is for the entire fiscal year, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I got a question on that too. So, Bridget, anything? I'll go to you, then I'll end.
Yeah, I have a question, a generic question. So when you all are doing the marketing for Bluffton, what particular content themes do you guys use?
Thank you, Councilman Bridget. I will happily go on to, if you will allow me to progress the slide.
Sure.
Our key areas of interest, and again, we held hands with the town to ensure these areas of interest, the area district designations. I'm going to not read them to you, you can see them, but history, culture, and arts. We want to ensure that the historical register designations are included. We've talked about our open spaces or public spaces that the town supports and promotes, as well as Palmetto Bluff, Montage, and Natural Beauty and May River, which have been at the center of our focus for the past few years. We've included the increased bullets that you see above that, but Natural Beauty and May River have been part of the evergreen promotion. When you look to take it a step further in key areas of interest, well, that's great when we're promoting those, but who are we promoting to? And that's where we break into personas. And these personas really start to capture how we couple areas of interest with people who specifically have interest for that, right? We can be more finite in our efforts and use those dollars really specifically to those that have, have a sports enthusiast background or a culinary background, taking those areas of interest and really coupling with them that have raised their hand to say, I'm interested in this. This is what I do day in and day out when I'm looking to travel or explore. These are my areas. And so we would promote those specifically to them. And really the social media and digital components of the plan allow us to be that specific. And that's where you can really see us hone in and get the greatest return on those investments. So we're excited that even with a significantly lower budget, we can still be very strategic and showcase some, hopefully some strong results for you in that area.
Thank you. And then one more question. In looking at that, I see the demographic and persona outline you have here. Do you notice that the demographics or personas hone in on one particular group more than like others?
I'm sorry, Councilman Bridget, I don't, Fraser, I don't understand the question. Is that, in terms of going further or deeper than family, or areas or location, or so when we look, is that answering the question? So if for family, if I take demographic and persona, is that we can see through our analytics, either through Google Analytics or Adara, I'm able to actually pinpoint not only area of where this family is raising their hand to say that they have interests in areas that we've defined as assets to the town of Bluffton, but we can also ensure that when we get into the marketing to them, we can be specific on what that message is. So we're not going to promote necessarily the sports component, but we're going to be promoting more family activity, things of that nature that would be more appealing to them at targeted times that we know that they like to travel. So that is how detailed we become with our efforts. And those really can be targeted, whether that be in our neighbor of Georgia, if we're going up to North Carolina, if we're going upstate of South Carolina, we can be very specific in those efforts and how we hone in. We're using drive markets, but we could easily use that for fly as well.
Thank you.
Yes.
I got a couple things. Thanks, Bridget. Just a couple of things, Ariana, kind of to follow up with Bridget on this screen. Can you get to the details of a lot of things we're not supposed to ask about age? Are they looking at history, or are they looking at day trips, or are they looking to move to Hilton Head for the week, but they want to know where they can go to kind of check out Bluffton? Maybe in the cultural and the family, can you get down to exactly what interests them?
Exactly, Mayor, those are great questions. And yes, so we have the capabilities with Google Analytics as well as Adara to see both sides. So we can see their consumer habits. How are they spending? And this is Adara specifically, but if we were to, I'm going to use you as an example, but Mayor, if you were to come to visit bluffton.org, I will pixel you. And I will follow you around for 90 days. And in that 90 days, any transaction or search that you do within the website gains, and I gain insight into what you're doing. What are your consumer habits? What are you purchasing? And at that point, we can start to build a profile and understand when you do make that purchase, the length of time it took you from look to book. On the other side, Google Analytics is also able to give us insight onto household income, how many people are in your house, how many devices are in your house. I mean, we can get that specific. What are you looking at? What are you interested in? In some way, shape, or form, we're understanding the nuances of your day-to-day life and your family's day-to-day life. So when we pick these personas and demographics, we're not, just arbitrarily saying snowbirds or family or weekenders. We've built those 6 personas on research that we've had to date with the Visit Bluffton website, as well as some of our other efforts that have been tied back to the website that gave us that insight.
Okay. You have more of the presentation to give? You have more?
Nothing more than would just be more granular.
A question on really, maybe it may be Ray. He said he's projecting, y'all get the percentage of our ATAX revenue. And for the last 2 months, there's probably been 0 revenue. And I know you've looked at and when does our budget start? When does this start? July. So you're looking at the following year and you're hoping July, the first quarter is going to be more 15% you're seeing, then it moves up to next year, this time, you feel like we're at 75%. Is that kind of where you were thinking, Ray?
Yeah. So the first collection in the next fiscal year is actually in August, and that's for the April, May, and June quarter. So the quarter that we're in right now. April and half of May has been basically 0. What we're hoping is that with the opening of Montage coming up, that we're not going to lose all of June, but that's why the number is so small at 15%.
I gotcha.
And then the quarter, the next quarter, the July through September quarter, which we would get the monies in November, we looked at 40%. And then the next quarter after that, October through December, which we would get those monies in February, at 75, or excuse me, at 60%, and then the following quarter at 75%. So the answer to your question is we don't think we're going to make it all the way back. Once we get to a year from now, we think we're going to be 75% back.
Well, I just wanted to throw on that because I was on a call today with Montage and their group, and they were kind of going through some of this as well. So, okay, that's all I really had on it. Just kind of looking and seeing how you're scheduling that. Anything else from anyone? Do you have anything else, Ariana, on this?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I think just to note, based on the financials, we are being conservative and hopeful that, we can flex that if those dollars change or ATAX collections change. But we wanted to bring forth the heaviness of this pandemic and understanding that we need to be mindful of those numbers that we couldn't be anticipating for them, at least for the first 2 quarters. So those are the budgets and the reasons behind the numbers that you're seeing today.
Well, I appreciate the caution on it because we all have to be cautious. And I know we'll ask this of other applicants tonight. I think I'm with Dan, and I'll get a thumbs up from council. I think it would be good if you could come, even at public comment, not a full, during council, just to say this is the trend. And I'm fine with Hilton Head, but I think you need to do it really Bluffton. This is our trend locally. This is what we're seeing. And I think it helped council at least kind of see where we are on track.
Absolutely, Mayor, absolutely.
Hotel rooms and whatever. So anything else from council? Okay, thank you, Ariana.
Thank you.
Moving on to formal agenda item. The first up is Scott Marshall, consideration of emergency ordinance of the town of Bluffton extending temporary suspension of normal operating procedures of the town of Bluffton, town council meetings and other public meetings, and to authorize the town manager to develop and enact such plans and policies needed to ensure continuity in the delivery of government services in light of COVID-19 outbreak. Scott, you're up.
Well, that was a mouthful, wasn't it, Mayor?
Well, you haven't learned to do short agenda items yet.
I am training, however.
But you're thorough.
So, so here's where we are. We're going to consider an emergency ordinance tonight. The one that we're presenting to you for consideration effectively extends 2 sections of the ordinance you passed previously on March 17th, and that's Ordinance 2020-03. And it extends the provisions of that in sections 1 and 2 for an additional 60 days. The emergency ordinance 2020-03 that you approved on March 17th effectively expires May 17th. So that's why we need to take some action if we want to continue our emergency protocols. For some background for council, on March 16th, a town of Bluffton state of emergency was declared via mayoral proclamation. On March 17th, town council passed the emergency ordinance 2020-03. The purpose of 2020-03 basically has 4 main sections in its provisions. The first of which provides standards for electronic public meetings, which is what we're in now and the reason why we can have meetings like this now. The second section provides authorization to the town manager as part of our standard code of ordinances 2-116 emergency powers of town manager that enables him to enact plans and policies to be sure we can continue to deliver services to the public and that he can take other actions as necessary to protect the public interests and protect the town interests to the greatest extent possible. Section 3 suspends certain municipal deadlines. Section 4 was written to enforce Governor Henry McMaster's Executive Order 2020-10, which extends certain municipal tax deadlines. Sections 3 and 4 were extended by Emergency Ordinance 2020-4, which council passed on April 20th, 2020. And if you recall, those extended payment for some tax deadlines to give our business community some relief. Sections 1 and 2, if you pass this ordinance this evening, would be extended until July 18, 2020 under the emergency ordinance that you have for consideration right now. So the next steps would be this emergency ordinance requires 2/3 vote of town council to pass. That means 4 out of 5 of you must vote yes in order to approve this ordinance. After the approval, Kim will file it as appropriate, and the town will continue to function under emergency condition protocols that we've already established in response to the threats of COVID-19. And lastly, this emergency ordinance would sunset on July 18, 2020, unless council decided to take action sooner to rescind it. So basically that is it. We have some motion language. I will stop sharing my screen now in the event you would like to discuss it.
Thanks. And I know I just bypassed public comment and council communications. I'll go back to it after this. I apologize, getting used to all of this. So thank you, Scott. This is something we can, well, I'll just let council talk because they can ask you questions. Let's start. Dan, questions? Mute. Dan, you're on mute. There you go.
I hope everyone's had a chance to look at the consent agenda, and there's an excellent graphic chart prepared by the police department in there showing you the numbers throughout the state of South Carolina on a per day scale and then where we are in Beaufort County. And we have made, I feel like we've made great progress as a county. We've been pretty much, we haven't been devastated by the COVID-19, you know, through our health situation in the hospitals and everything. Yes, economically, yes. So anyway, I don't want to give up that ground. I think that I think we're in a safe environment, and I know with people moving around, I want to continue to encourage everyone to do safe distancing and try to wear a mask and stuff. And let's don't give up those numbers that look, you know, they haven't moved that much. The only other question that I would have is, and I don't think we have an answer for this, and I don't know what public policy is on this nationally, but I'm very interested in our parks. I don't want to put anybody in harm's way, so I'm not asking we do anything tonight, but that's one area that I'm certainly anxious to see take place, an opening of a park when we can.
Dan, got it. Now, were those questions for Scott on this particular item, or were you jumping into mayor and comment from mayor and council?
Well, I guess what I'm saying, under the emergency order, we were doing a good job by keeping the COVID numbers level in the county and in the town. So I support the ordinance, or his request based on that.
Gotcha. I'm sorry. Thank you. Fred, anything on this formal item?
I'm just going to stick to the formal item for now. I'll come back to other
Yeah.
comments when it's time comes, but I
Yeah.
support the ordinance.
Okay. Anything on this item, Larry?
Just one quick question. Just because we extend it for another 60 days, if things get back to normal, how do we get away from it? Or how does it have to expire at the end of 60 days without a renewal from us? Or in 30 days, if life's somewhat back to normal, do we go back to normal ways? It's more of a question than just to clear my mind.
Well, thank you, Councilman Toomer. That's a good question. The answer is, if council chooses to take action to rescind that ordinance sooner, then it can do so. So in other words, if conditions dramatically improve, then council can take formal action to rescind this emergency ordinance, and you would go back to normal business operations or to whatever level of operations you deem appropriate at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Bridget, anything? You're on mute.
The ordinance that Scott's referring to is more so just allowing us to have virtual meetings and other things. From what I'm seeing, this isn't the one pertaining to parks or any other public spaces, correct?
The answer, Councilwoman Frazier, is yes and no. There is a component, there is a section 2 that grants the town manager authorization to take actions as necessary in the public's interest in light of the threat that we have under COVID-19 to make certain decisions. And among those decisions are the decision to keep the parks open or to keep the parks closed, and those types of things. When we open town hall, how we open town hall, all of those items fall under the town manager's purview. And that goes back to our basic Town of Bluffton Code of Ordinances, section 2-116, which is authorization of town manager emergency powers, which are activated by this ordinance that you passed on March 17th, and which we're asking you to renew tonight.
I'm in favor of it.
Okay. Thank you, Bridget. Yeah, I don't want it 60 days either, Larry. So if any of y'all, and I will rely on Mark to let us, and all the calls are on, if we see that we can take it away, I'm all about it. We can have a special meeting to do it so easy, or we can look at it. We can look at it definitely in June, but if we need a special meeting to rescind it, I'm all about it too. So that solves all the questions. Is there a motion to approve an emergency ordinance of the Town of Bluffton temporarily suspending the normal operating procedures of the Town of Bluffton in town council meetings and other Town of Bluffton public meetings, and to authorize the town manager for the Town of Bluffton to develop and enact such plans and policies needed to ensure continuity and the delivery of government services in light of the COVID-19 outbreak, to temporarily suspend the operation of deadlines imposed upon the town, extend tax compliance and deadlines and matters related thereto, and severability as presented.
So move.
There's second.
Second.
Any discussion? I'll do a roll call. I think it'll be easier. Dan?
Aye.
Fred?
Yes.
Lisa? Aye. Larry?
Aye.
Bridget?
Aye.
That's unanimous. Okay, I overlooked public comment. I apologize. And then we'll do communications from mayor and council, and then we'll jump into ATAC. So public comment, during this time, you are filing your public comment online. Kim Chapman has requirements on that. It's on the bottom of our agendas as to when to get it. She reads the public comment, and at 3 minutes, we politely end it. So Kim, you're up.
Okay. We've got one public comment, and it's in regard to the workshop item regarding historic district incentives. Wait on the timer here for a minute. All right, public comment from Debbie Wonder, 41 and 45 Bridge Street in Bluffton. My husband, Rusty Pistachio, and myself own the historic building on the corner of Bridge and Boundary known as The Rate. We are very excited to hear that there was a proposal being considered by the town council called the Bailey Bill. We can only speak from our own experience, but as owners in the middle of rehabilitating, oh my goodness. The share screen, yep.
Wait a minute. We're watching Scott's screen.
Yes, I'm gonna stop for a sec.
Stop.
Okay.
No.
We can only speak from our own experience, but as owners in the middle of rehabilitating a historic structure in Old Town Bluffton, the undertaking of this project has been daunting, frustrating, but ultimately rewarding as a labor of love. We purchased the property 2 years ago from previous owners that had neglected the rate and let it come dangerously close to a full collapse. We are not developers nor have experience in construction, but we do have a love and respect for importance of historic buildings in Old Town. Our goal was to stabilize and breathe life into this community landmark by restoring the exterior look of the rate while making it a functioning space inside. The support of HPC, HPRC, and the community has been overwhelming. But to say that we have faced challenges in this restoration is an understatement. If we were building a brand new structure from the ground up, this project would have been completed a year ago. Thankfully, we met Josh Simpson of Simpson Construction and who has a love of the town as much as we do and agreed to go on this journey of stabilizing an old cinder block building with so many unknowns. We cannot overstate his patience, guidance, and understanding of our situation. To speak plainly, we are not wealthy people and really didn't anticipate all the unforeseen costs associated with restoring a dilapidated structure with no foundation, electricity, or plumbing. So when our property tax bill arrived this past fall, we saw the amount had gone up 300% from the previous year, another cost we did not anticipate. Personally, it stung a little to be putting everything we have into bringing back a beloved building in the community and then to be hit with a tax bill of that size. We see many great historic structures in town that would benefit the community if they were rehabilitated. And having some kind of financial incentive like the Bailey Bill would provide, we believe this would help motivate other people like us who want to do the right thing, but maybe don't have all the money they need to do so. Another thought, in addition to an abatement on property tax like the Bailey Bill proposes, maybe there can be a fund for vetted and approved contractors who are willing to take on such a project where they can draw on these funds specifically for improvement or rehabilitation for Old Town historic structures. Thank you for your time and consideration.
And that was all a public comment?
Yes,
Pub-
ma'am.
Public comment is over. I guess it was meant that I bypass the workshop item as well as public comment. So hope we can address some of her comments when we go to the workshop agenda item. Next is communications from mayor and council. Anyone? Dan?
Just again, I want to remind the citizens that we're in a new normal. I know everybody wants to get out and fill up the restaurants and the bars and get out and visit, but it's a new normal. It's not the old normal. And continue to please support your churches and your nonprofits. Thank you.
Great. Fred, anything?
Yes, in Ariana's presentation, I took some mental notes that I didn't see, other than the Garvey House, where they are promoting the Gullah culture, especially in Bluffton, and also in their demographic and persona. It doesn't look like Bluffton. It looked like it could be anywhere in the world. It doesn't look like Bluffton was their highlight. It could have been Hilton Head or it could have been Myrtle Beach, but I like to see Bluffton as a focus, because we trying to be very awarding in the funds that we've been giving them over the years. So I'd like to see Bluffton shown as a true partner, and their effort has to be a little bit more presentable for the African American community, as well as and some of those pictures should show the African American community as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Larry, anything from Mayor Council?
Just one quick one. I'm hearing and seeing, with the parks. I'm hoping that as we progress, with the other businesses and stuff opening up, that we could possibly consider starting to open up some of our parks, even if not all, for even if it's a limited access. But I'm hearing from the people that they're wanting the dog park open, and wanting to use some of our open space that we've accumulated. So just passing the word. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anything from Bridget, Mayor and Council? Anything from you, Bridget, right now?
Yeah, just a continued thank you to all the organizations who've been working to support those who've been in need during the pandemic, and also recognition to some frontliners who haven't really gotten much, and those are the custodians and domestic workers who've been working hard to keep hospitals clean and other places clean and sanitized, and just a huge kudos to them and their hard work as well.
Great. And I'll finish it up. I had a meeting today with the Montage with 165 of their employees, talking about opening, talking about what they're doing to make their customers feel comfortable. All the procedures are in place. Mark, it reminded me of what you're doing for town. It was very impressive. The links that they're going to take, the requirement of mask without being told to. They don't have a mask on, they don't come to work. Just a lot of things that everyone should be doing, quite frankly, to give that customer and that client a feeling of security. It might not help at all, but it gives them that feeling of, you care about me, so I'm going to care about you. It was a really great meeting. I'm going to ask if he can send me the presentation. I'll be glad to send it to everyone. Just well thought out. That's it. I'm going to, Bridget, I'm just going to thank you for what you're doing with your church, and what's come from it, other than feeding school children on Saturday, has given Chief Chapman and his team the ability to community police in a totally different way. And they have the respect and trust of some of the community that didn't trust them before. And I rode with them Saturday, and I was telling someone who was with me that wanted to hand out food, I said, look at the sirens. What do you think people think? What do you think? Sirens and lights, run. Well, they're not running away anymore. They're running too. And what you're doing, Chief, I just thank you. I wanted you to know that publicly. It's just amazing what your team and some of your new hires are doing, and really special. So it's all on our website on Helping Hands. So please go on there and see where you can help out if you're listening or want to help donate to a cause. Ryan Coleman did a great site under Helping Hands on our map page. And it's also under the resource link on our site. So, okay. Moving on to work, if I passed anything, workshop agenda is next, Kim. So the workshop agenda is discussion and direction on the Town of Bluffton Historic District financial incentives to promote and support the preservation of historic structures. This is a workshop to get direction on where to go. We're not voting, and I am giving that to Heather. You're up.
Thank you. Give me a moment. I'm going to share my screen here so you can see my presentation.
And while you're doing it, for those of you unmuted, if you could mute, that'd be great. Ray, you're one.
Okay, thank you. So as the public comment was discussing this is the discussion and direction for historic district financial incentives to promote and support the preservation of historic structures. The Bailey Bill is one of those incentives. And there are also other ones that I will present, and sort of a menu, so to speak, of options that we could consider moving forward. So you may recall, I did a workshop item on this a while ago, and at that point we had outlined some steps and things that had to take place in order to get to the point of moving forward to the next step. But further, this is supported in the strategic plan as approved by Town Council, and really the tax incentives can encourage economic growth, which is one of the strategic plan items to preserve the town's older buildings, the heritage and culture, support heritage tourism, which helps with the economy, as well as increase property values. The Bailey bill is the special property tax assessment, and one of the more familiar ones that offers the most that special tax assessment. That is a tax abatement for rehabilitated historic properties. That special assessment permits a property owner to essentially lock in at that pre-rehabilitation work taxable assessed value of the property. The taxes are not paid on that increased value of the property until that assessment period ends, which could be anywhere up to 20 years. And that is also transferable to the next owners. Participation is voluntary, and there are minimum requirements that must be met, which are outlined in the state code, which I will touch on throughout the presentation. This is just an example that the Municipal Association of South Carolina has put together for different types of properties. And I will get further in the presentation. There is the local town assessment, as well as a potential to include Beaufort County, as well as the school district. The minimum requirements include a preliminary certification. So basically that would confirm a contributing status of the structure, or and then also the proposed rehabilitation activities. And all of that can be outlined in the ordinance as far as the specifics and that value that must be invested. Once the work.
Heather, real
Yes.
quick, can you not share the screen for the public to see what you're talking about?
Sorry,
That's okay.
it was, let me go back.
I'm looking on mine, but maybe just where you are, if you can.
How about let's try this again. Can you all see that?
Perfect.
All right, sorry, there's a slight delay. Well, I will say I'm happy to go back. I think I touched on everything pretty well, but the one thing that would be helpful to see is this is the example that I presented, that this is from the Municipal Association, and this just outlines a possible scenario as far as what those numbers would be if you had a increased value of $50,000 for residential, for example, 150 for commercial. And then also, like I said, this could include just the town of Bluffton, but we could also partner with the school district as well as the county to increase that savings. Like I said, there's the preliminary and the final certification and approval process, as whatever those details are outlined in the ordinance, should it move forward. And these are the minimum requirements. So like I said, there is, you've got that preliminary and final certification for eligible properties. There is also a system that needs to be designated to qualify properties. So that could be an OR statement of designated on the National Register of Historic Places, being designated as a contributing structure, or also just 50 years older and meet that local criteria. There's also a minimum requirement that must be set as far as the minimum rehabilitation work. So this furthers the workshop items that I discussed the last time I was before you on this agenda item, and things that needed to move forward with in order to consider the adoption of the ordinance. And that includes changes to our Unified Development Ordinance, specifically as historic structures and contributing structures are defined, as well as updating our contributing structures list in our survey, which we are well underway. A survey has been completed, and we are on track to bring all of that forward to you this coming July. And again, we have worked on that historic resource survey. Staff is diligently reviewing that, making sure it's aligned with our UDO and our ordinance. And that is, again, all of that is estimated to bring forward to you together in this coming July. So the steps to adopt the ordinance is to determine what that length of that assessment period is. There, it ranges from 10 years to 20 years maximum. The city of Beaufort has established a 10-year period, and I would recommend that, at least as a starting point for discussion this evening, that we follow what they have been using. There's also, like I mentioned, a minimum investment that's required by the property owner. The city of Beaufort requires that minimum investment to be 75%. And so there's just an example. So if your property is valued prior to the work at $100,000, you would have to invest, if 75% were that number, $75,000 would qualify. And then you would be locked in at $100,000 for the period of 10 years for your assessment.
Can I jump in with a question real quick on that?
Of course.
It says Beaufort County only adopted it for areas of Defusky and the city of Beaufort. So are they in line with us to do this? And when they did it for Beaufort, did they do 10 years?
It's 10 years was what they've used moving forward. We have started the discussion with county staff and let them know that we are moving forward with a workshop item on this, but there are additional steps that we would have to bring forward to Beaufort County Council for their consideration to include that tax portion if we chose.
But did Beaufort County do a 10-year or a 20-year when they supported the city of Beaufort and areas of Defusky?
10 years.
10 years, okay, sorry.
That's okay, thanks. So moving on, the other thing that would have to be qualified is the three categories of property that would qualify as historic. So that would be, and this again is an or statement right now, but we could definitely, this can be specified however the town of Bluffton chose, but the code allows you to allow National Register of, if you're on the National Register of Historic Places. So for the town of Bluffton, Campbell AME Church, Church of the Cross, or any contributing structures that are in individual properties in the historic district, as well as any property that's 50 years or older that meets that local government designation. And that's why we were moving forward with updating that contributing resource survey to align everything together. So here's following activities that would qualify. So improvements located on or within the contributing structure, improvements outside but directly attached to the contributing structure. So this could be that rentable habitable floor space, so interior work as well, architectural or engineering services that go along to the design of the improvements and the cost necessary to maintain. We also have to identify an agency or department that would do the final certifications for qualifying properties. Typically that would be the Historic Preservation Review Committee or something similar. So staff would recommend that that is within the town's Historic Preservation Commission. And then again, that expands on working with Beaufort County to expand the tax savings should you all direct staff to explore the additional options and special tax assessment. So I can stop there. That's my summary for the Bailey bill. And then I have the list and the attachment of the additional financial incentives that we could move forward with as well.
So do you want a support of moving with the Bailey bill? Do you want us to give you suggestions of the criteria? Shouldn't you bring us what you think at more of a formal item and let us discuss it?
Yes, what we'd like right now, and I've included in your packet, the City of Beaufort's ordinance what staff is recommending is that we continue to move forward with the Bailey bill with using those criteria requirements that the city of Beaufort has put in place to stay aligned with that. And should we move forward, we can start the conversation with both Beaufort County government to increase that special tax assessment savings, expand rather, and then also the school district, if you would like to include that special tax assessment as well.
Any thoughts or conversations on this part of her workshop from anybody?
Yeah, I have a question.
There, Bridget. Yes.
So Heather, in the bill under the description, it also mentions that also for buildings, it says low and moderate income rental properties. And now, is this for those rental properties that have been identified as historic and rehabilitated to be used as rental properties, or is that just saying that the bill is also available for low to moderate income properties?
I believe it says that the bills also, you can also use it for the low to moderate income properties, but again, with if it's a historic preservation or rehabilitation activity.
Okay, and my other questions are, would this qualify for a previously rehabilitated property, or is this something that's only going to go into effect for new or current rehabilitation projects?
It would be new or new proposals moving forward due to the certification.
Gotcha.
Anything else from anyone on this particular section?
Yes,
Larry?
Mayor.
Oh, Dan, and Larry, did you have something too? Okay, Dan and then Larry. Okay, go Dan.
Yeah, and Heather, Bridget's question was good when I didn't understand. For example, the lady, Miss Wonder, who had written in the comment, who's working on the rate, if she's still working, they're still working on that 6 months to a year from now, and this thing's implemented, would they qualify or they wouldn't qualify for assistance?
And I believe any work that hasn't been started yet could go through the review process. It hasn't been complete yet. However, that's something that I can certainly follow up on and get a certain definitive answer for you. But I believe if the work has not yet been done, again, you just have to go through the certification process. The pre-work assessed value may be higher than if they would have started from the very beginning.
Two more items real quick. The selection of the model from the town or the city of Beaufort, have they actually used it?
Yes, I believe so. It's very limited properties, but I will have those. I can have specific examples for you moving forward.
And the other part is because I know that we all know that historic revitalization of a building can be extremely expensive. And so, some people don't want to spend that kind of money, which is the reason we're having this discussion. But in your report tonight, your workshop, you gave examples of federal government incentives. You were talking about the county, we're talking about state. Is there an example you can provide next time, maybe showing, because again, we're just looking at one avenue and it doesn't really paint a good picture for somebody that would qualify for numerous incentives instead of just one.
Sure, of course. And does that lead me to?
Great. Larry, is that all, Dan?
Yes, it is, Mayor.
Okay, Larry, anything?
Yeah, just Heather, with the in the city of Beaufort, that assessed value, has the county agreed? I mean, does that go for county and town assessment, or just the part of the tax bill that the town of Beaufort gets? Is it?
No, my understanding is both the county as well as the city of Beaufort.
Okay, so the county basically has to give their blessings because they get most of the tax money anyway.
Yes.
So, So we would have to get approval from the county. Would that be done on, just like, if we pass this ordinance, would they automatically agree to a structure that we agree to? Or would it have to go through, would it have to get their blessings before those credits, before that new assessment could take place?
It would have to go through the Beaufort County Finance Committee and go through their approval process
Okay, on the as comes.
on the ordinance.
Yeah, just each individual property would have to do
No,
that,
sir.
right?
No, sir. Once the ordinance is approved, then it's in place. So each individual property or application would only go through whatever review process we establish in the ordinance, which would be that pre-approval criteria or the pre-certification criteria, and then the certification from the Historic Preservation Commission. It would not involve the other taxing agencies.
So the county that wouldn't have to sign off. If we say it's okay, then they would automatically agree, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
No, the county would have to sign off on the ordinance approving the same thing. But once the ordinance is approved, if it should be approved by the county, as well as if we would like to include the school district tax assessment saving as well, both of those entities would have to approve the ordinance, but not the individual applications after that point.
That was my question. Thank you.
Yeah, I think if we can keep it as close to the city of Beaufort, it sets a precedent. If the county supported the city of Beaufort's request and we can keep it along those lines, there should be no reason. It should be easy. So I have a couple of questions. Can we do this under pending doctrine when it gets to it? So if there are any just thinking about it, they can at least get in the loop. And the county had passed it. I didn't know they just did it for a few things. How can we help the rate? How can we help people who are a small percentage of our population that actually want to keep buildings up that have stories to them? And I'm so proud of them. And how can we do it from this point forward? Did they have an appraisal when they first started? I guess I'm asking, can we find ways to help them even though they're midstream? And if we did this with pending doctrine ordinance, it could move someone like that further along, perhaps. So those are just you don't need to answer, just questions for when you present. Anyone else? Okay, so Bailey bill sounds like we're okay. No one said anything to the negative. You've taken notes on our questions on what we'd like to see and move on.
Well, and with that, I can continue through the other incentives. You asked what we could do for the rate or other properties. Here's some incentives. We've pulled together all of the other incentives that are available at either the federal level, the state, and also the local. Many of these may require, if we moved forward, a budgetary component included, and some would not necessarily require a budgetary component at the beginning, but would just be time and maybe income with some building permit waiver options and things like that. But this is where I talked about the Bailey bill, I guess, is the main course, so to speak. And here's the rest of the menu where we can, move forward. If there are certain ones that you'd like staff to move forward with and see what those budgetary implications could be or what that would affect, that's certainly an option. But these are also other incentives that are available right now. So, and this lists out, I know it's a lot of information. I can certainly go through and answer questions, or if you have comments on individual incentive opportunities. But there is, as you can see, here's a list of the state incentives of opportunities that are available now. And then here's some local incentive options, those potential options for future consideration. And this is where we listed all of those. You can see the very first one, there's the Bailey bill, which received your input, and moving forward with that. There's other options listed, like I said, the loans, the matching funds. And again, there's just certain process changes that would have to take place. However, there are some, let's see, technical assistance workshops that we could hold. We have done this in the past, especially related to in conjunction with the Preservation Symposium and other community workshops and things like that. But we could move forward with that and try to get some partners in and conduct some assistance and workshop opportunities. There's a building code things that could take place as far as reducing or waiving of certain fees associated with historic rehabilitation or improvements. That's another opportunity. So this is, again, here's some more here, just loans, grants, and things of that nature. So there's kind of a whole list of options that we could get some more information together and move forward with as we continue to help out and work with property owners and business owners and residents to rehabilitate their properties.
So you want us to give you our input on all of this. I think I'll start. Do we have someone in place? I know at one point it was the Bluffton Historic Preservation Society who was going to promote preservation. If not them, should we put a task force together? We have the people who own the rate right now have gone through it. They sure know what would be needed. Joni Hayward's gone through it. The gentleman who bought the Loudon house. I mean, there are so many people who put some sweat into this. I like all of it. I wish we had someone that could carry someone right through it, like the Don Ryan Center does with their hub, like someone that can just walk people right through every possible consideration. Anybody else? The workshop item, so chime in. Everyone's on mute.
Well, since I'm not on mute, I'll say.
Bridget, they all got off of
Oh, there you
mute.
go.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so are you proposing, Lisa, like a committee that would sit and review stuff like this?
I was just thinking, we have people that have done it. What are the things they wish they could have taken advantage of? What are some people thinking? Maybe we find some people who have these structures that would like to do it but have no idea. And what of these things are the items? What's Beaufort use? What do other places use? And let's tackle it.
Right. And could it be like putting together a packet similar to like the mobile vending ordinance, where you give a step-by-step guide of like kind of where to start and what you need to do, what you need to have filled out in order to qualify for this? That might be good.
You could certainly do that.
Well, we have a bit, and I'm not asking to do this now or suggesting that, but we have a position, when Aaron left, and we have a position that eventually will be filled, and you're going to need that individual to help navigate all of this. And it's complicated. I mean, right here, as I'm looking at your screen, there's numerous advantages. And again, not only counting the federal and the state and the county. And so, like the mayor, we want to give every advantage to those who are trying to salvage Bluffton's history. But again, we need some examples of some sort. I can't decipher it myself, and so I can't imagine John Q. Public can either.
I agree. Anyone, Fred?
Finally, I agree with something Dan said.
Y'all are side by side on the screen. So.
But I think we're at a place where we really have to put our heads around this even more. There's a lot of information here. There's a lot of advantages and maybe some disadvantages. So I think we need to workshop this a little bit more so we can have a better understanding. I have some experience about the Bailey Bill through the Municipal Association, but this is way too advanced for us to try to put in the hands of others right now. And I would like for council to make sure that we give strong direction, even if we do put it in the hands of the public. So I think we need more time. I'm definitely supporting it, but I think we need more time to understand how it works for Bluffton and how we can define it so that we can get the best potential out of this Bailey bill. It has so many legs to it that we need to make sure we understand it.
Where are we in hiring the new Aaron? And I know we've got the COVID, I know all of that. I mean, is it next? I mean, are we just going without anyone other? I mean, Katie's doing great, but.
Right now we're on hold. Just once we see where we're at, based on the situation with just working from afar and things of that nature. But I don't think it's gone away, but I'll defer to council and town manager.
Well, do you have good feedback on this, Heather? We don't
I
want to
do.
for 2 more years. We did this in 18 and now we're in 20 and we're really in 21. Bring us back some thoughts. Maybe Beaufort get some examples of the Bailey bill and how it worked in Beaufort. I'm sure we can find something. And
What it sounds like moving forward, I will move forward with the Bailey bill based on your comments. And next steps would be first reading, second reading, public hearing. So there will be more opportunities for me to provide that additional information to you and to make sure I've captured everyone's direction and comments moving forward. And then the additional items continue to workshop and move forward with, but at least move forward with the Bailey bill based on the discussion tonight.
And check on the pending doctrine.
Of course.
Mayor, if I could make one comment,
Mhm.
I think it would be a great advantage if we could possibly survey some of the people who have done these projects. You know, whether it be Joni or whoever that, like you said, has the experience, knows the bumps in the road. If we could possibly find out from them, you know, what they suggest, maybe it could help guide us in the direction to make it simpler and, you know, more user friendly, possibly for the next one that wants to do something.
I agree.
Okay.
Good. Anything else?
Yeah, Heather, for the next time that this is brought up for the first reading, would it be possible to have a user-friendly guideline, just like a draft put together of what it potentially could look like? So we could, you know, kind of like dissect that one to see what would need to be clarified more to make it more easy for people.
Sure. Are you looking for a user guide for potential applicants or and or summary sheets?
Right.
Okay. Of course.
And that may be where some of these who have done it can help you, Heather. Maybe, you know, there are many, probably a dozen in town that have utilized grants. They could look at this and say, this is how an applicant would come and this is what I would say to do, and maybe base it off of whatever appraised value of some building would be, and knowing that it's all estimate. Is that where you're going, Bridget? Just kind of get an idea of, if you had a historic structure, what would your steps be?
Right, or for those who, and especially for those who now can take advantage of this particular bill, they don't need to go and necessarily look the bill up. They more so would want to have that guide in front of them of where do I start to first make sure that my property is historic. And then now that I know that I've checked off that box, now let me move to the next step to see if I've met the investment qualification, you know, for it, almost like creating something that they can use as a checklist. So it's not a matter of, you know, what is this or what's that? They kind of already have it in front of them, and at least gives them a clear starting point of where to go.
I gotcha. Kind of here's a house. If you say yes, you go this way. If you say no, you're going down to this option, and kind of, you know, a diagram like.
Right.
Like,
I was thinking, just like the ordinance one that I think Mark and staff created for the mobile vending thing. You know, it gives you all of the different departments you might have to go through, whether it's the fire department for your hood inspection or DHAC for your kitchen inspection. Like it lists step by step what you have to do. Then once you have that, then you come to whomever to get your final approval and everything else.
Gotcha. Okay. Everybody good? You got
Of course.
that direction?
One question, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Heather, since we're not going to fill that position this year, coming year, I know Fred referenced the municipal association who they had some consultants who gave discussions on this very topic about a year or two ago. Are you going to need some assistance from a consultant? I mean, do we need to look at doing that before this budget's approved? Or, because this is pretty complex and it looks to me like it'd be time consuming.
I think for the Bailey bill, if we're using the city of Beaufort as an example and a model, certainly I can reach out if needed to professional services or consultants, but city of Beaufort has already gone through the process. So I think there's lots of examples out there concerning the Bailey bill that I can move forward with. But certainly that's always an opportunity, but I'm confident that we can move forward with the Bailey bill next steps with the staff right now. And again, using our partners in the region.
Okay, very good.
Okay. Thank you, Heather. We are moving on to the Accommodations Tax Advisory Committee funding recommendation. The quarter ended March 30th, 2020. Natalie, and if you have a screen, do you have a screen share? Just while we're on and she's getting ready, we do have several people, applicants, and we have Sam Britt, who is still the chair, that's here, and we can ask questions of them. So here you go. It's all yours, Natalie.
Forgot to unmute myself. Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Town Council. Can you see my screen? Okay. You have before you the Accommodations Tax Advisory Committee's recommendations for quarter ending March 31st, 2020. Here you have all four applicants. I would like to state that Palmetto Bluff Conservancy has withdrawn their application. And so now there are 3 applicants for this quarter, which includes the resolution for approval of the DMO funding for FY 2021. With that withdrawn applicant, it brings the total amount being requested to $284,000. Due to the timing of the ATAC committee in April, we did not have the state funds yet. And so this is reflected here as 0. And then we only have the local funds here noted through the end of March. At the time of the committee, there were $866,283 available for distribution. Since that time, we have received the state funds and the additional month's worth of the local. So that number is higher now. And it is $956,789 available for distribution. The first recommendation from ATAC is for the DMO funding resolution for 2021 as it pertains to the current 2019-33 contract with Hilton Head Island Bluffton Chamber of Commerce to manage and direct the expenditures of the 30% of the state accommodations tax and the up to 8% of the balance of local accommodations tax. And as presented earlier from Ariana and Ray Deal, their requested budget is $82,000. And here's a comparison from last fiscal year against this fiscal year's request. And then the next item is BHPS, the Bluffton Historical Preservation Society. And that is a resolution authorizing an amendment to the current 2017-69 Memorandum of Agreement for the annual request of the Bluffton Historical Preservation Society as the town of Bluffton's official welcome center and adheres to the terms within the MOA. And here again is another comparison of the request from BHPS against their last year's or this current year's request for fiscal year 2020.
Natalie, you're not showing us you didn't show us the before and after for the chamber or this other one. We're stuck on this one page.
Okay, let me,
I see it, but I don't think people on Facebook, they can only see your May 12th or your page 1 recommendation.
okay,
Yeah, you need to scroll down some.
Just scroll down, scroll up
I'm
or
wondering
down.
if it's stuck. Let me
Well,
try and,
Can you not scroll down?
yeah, I'm able to scroll down on my screen. Let me try and share it again and see if something's stuck for some reason. Okay.
We weren't getting but the top of it.
That's okay. Let's see if this will work now. Did it update it at all?
Much better.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
perfect.
Okay.
now
Okay.
too far. Okay.
This is, so do you see the DMO here?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any questions on this and do you want me to scroll down?
Go on and show the last year and this year on all of them, and then we'll take it one at a time, if that's
Okay.
okay with council. Okay.
Okay, and then here is a similar chart, but for BHPS with the FY 2020 versus the FY 2021 request. Would you like me to progress to the third applicant?
Mhm.
Okay. And then the final applicant for your consideration is for, sorry, I need to scroll through the Bluffton or Palmetto Bluff, is from the Society of Bluffton Artists for support in advertising for promotion of the arts of the Low Country and beyond. The original request was for $16,000, but ATAC is recommending $12,000 per the notes and guidelines within the town of Bluffton's ATAX application. And the committee has recommended to fully fund all of the eligibility, or I'm sorry, all of the eligible requested amounts. And as stated before, we have representatives from all of the applicants as well as Sam Britt as chair. Any
Okay.
questions? We're
Let-
happy to address them.
Let's go one by one. If there are any questions, I'll just let council ask. Let's start with our DMO budget. The presentation was given. Are there any questions of that? Other than Ariana, I think addressed Fred's concern, and I think Bridget was going there and I was trying to go there, but Fred just took the straight line. What is that committee made of with the town? How do we make all of our marketing look like our town, which includes all race, Hispanic too, you know? Just how do we get that input and make sure it's in our marketing? Ariana, you're muted.
Hello, Mayor. Thank you for those questions. And we work very closely with your staff, and we will continue to do so. And I think with our cadence of communication and our efforts put forward in terms of photography, videography, efforts in which we promote and who we promote to, those are all discussed, and we can take that even a step further to ensure that those are agenda items that you're seeing prior. But those items in our regular cadence of communication, those would be the touch points in which we would discuss that. So before heading out into a shoot or for a videography effort, we would look to communicate with the town staff to ensure we're not only capturing the higher level detail that we spoke about, but also getting into exactly some of the shots and efforts that we want to capture, encompassing ensuring that we cover all demographics.
Okay. Any questions on this one item? We have Ariana here, and then we have the chair. Like I said, we have Sam here from ATAX. Anybody?
Yeah, so what I was
Either
asking,
hand. Bridget?
yeah,
Sorry.
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now.
Okay, no, I was saying, so what I was getting at earlier, Fred touched on it a little bit, but my question was more so, And the demographic and the personas, I see where the marketing goes to, you know, bases like Southern Living and Garden and Gun and other things. I was more so trying to get to, do we look at, or can you start to look at other avenues that you market to, knowing that there are other travelers who do hit the area. And it seems like we might be missing a group if we're only looking at marketing to a certain base or a certain demographic. I just wanted to make sure that we were being more inclusive of that.
Well, you know what would be, I think what we do as a council, we need to get our staff, and I think it's Debbie and Lindsay, and sit with them on what they need to bring to the table. I've sat in those marketing meetings on occasion. I think all of us could, as long as it's not a quorum. But then we have our staff that goes directly to them. I think we've got to hold them kind of accountable for ideas, and Ariana maybe bring some ideas like that. What's in the historical and the historical tourism kind of world too, and just marketing to what makes Bluffton what it is. So you can respond or just make sure, Bridget, I think we all have to give our staff the ideas to take to that marketing meeting. So everybody, any other questions on this? Did you want to answer, Ariana?
No, just that it's noted, and we will make sure that those conversations are happening with your staff, and ensure that we cover those points during our conversations.
And if we have ideas of places we think we're missing, let's give them to Debbie, whoever our point person is. Let's give them those ideas of places they can look to. So any other questions of the first request, which is the FY 2021 budget marketing plan, requested 82, amount recommended 82. We know it is a percentage of the total revenue. That could be up or down. Who knows what it's going to be? Do y'all want to vote on that while we have it and there are no other questions?
Yes, let's vote.
Is there a motion to accept the Hilton Head Island Bluffton Chamber of Commerce DMO budget and marketing plan, amount requested 82,000, amount recommended 82,000?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor state by saying aye, and we'll just say it. No roll call.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. Then next is Bluffton Historic Preservation Society. Why don't you scroll down to that, Natalie? We have Kelly is here, and again, we have Sam Britt, who is online if we have questions besides to Natalie. So questions, anybody? Where is it apples to apples to the other? Where you put just two, is it the FY 20, is it the ATEX award to 2020 to the ATEX award of 2021, Natalie, or how do we compare it to the last one?
Yes, that is correct. These percentages should be based off of the awards here and the request and the recommended amount here.
Okay. Questions? No questions on this?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I remember in the meeting we discussed that he said he could operate with $20,000 less. It doesn't reflect that in this budget because at that time he was asking for $190,000. Are you familiar with that, Natalie?
I am, Councilman Hamilton, and there has been continual dialogue between the town and BHPS. This was on this current fiscal year's worth of the budget, the marketing allocation for that budget. You'll see here, if my cursor is working, the request was 25,000, and then during the meeting, the 20,000 was discussed. We have not reimbursed that 20,000, so we've kept it. But then you'll hear, or we have not reimbursed the 20,000 that was discussed at that meeting. And then you'll see here for the 21 request, it is reduced to 4,500. And then also the recommendation is 4,500 for marketing.
Okay, you confused me because the final number is still 190,000.
It is. There was not a revised vote for that original request of the 190. But there was just the discussion that 20,000 not be used. Does that help answer your question?
Thank you for trying.
I'm sorry.
Salka, may I attempt to answer this question?
Thank you.
Can you hear, Lisa, can you hear me?
We don't see you, Mark, or I don't see you. There you are.
I am here, I promise. I
I know,
promise.
looking for you. Yes, Mark.
Fred asked the question, but it's still at 190. You know, I think we're answering the question of what happened to the $20,000 that Kelly at last year's presentation offered that perhaps he could operate without. And while he asked for $25,000 under advertising and marketing, there was some discussion of lowering that number $20,000. So they haven't asked, we haven't reimbursed that $20,000. Ultimately affects their last year's award by 190 being approved, but BHPS, as far as I understand, will not ask us for anything more than 170. Therein lies that 20. They are asking for 190 again this year. And so while the advertising and marketing is lower from 25K down to 45, you can see where the $20,000 is being asked for. And it's right here where I'm moving my mouse. It's in that FY21 request where they've asked for $20,000 for capital improvements. And it seems that the accommodations tax committee recommendation is for 13. Councilman Hamilton, therein is that extra 20 lost in marketing, but asked for in capital improvements this year.
Right.
I think that, does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, sir. We'll deal with that another time, but I'm good.
If I may,
No, real quick, Kelly, let me just make sure there's nothing else first, but save that. And let me I should have said at the beginning, my husband is on this board, so I'm running this, but I will not be voting or asking any questions. I'm just going to run through this and get y'all on track. So I will abstain when I vote. So don't wait on me to ask questions. I'm not going to be asking tonight. So anything else before Kelly can speak? Were there any other questions he can answer? Okay, Kelly, sorry. I just wanted to get that out there. You're muted.
thank you, Mayor, Council, managers, and staff for having us this evening. We were on track to have a record-breaking year again this year. In fiscal year 18-19, we had our highest visitor total ever, which was just under 13,000 people. It's just over 1,000 visitors a month on average. 82% of them come from out of town. Surprising that that's the amount of the Welcome Center budget that is allowed for in the formula to be paid for with accommodations tax. So you are reimbursing us for 82, it may be 83% of the Welcome Center budget. So as I heard Manager Orlando say yesterday in his presentation meeting, we had the benefit of time this year because we work on our budget in February. So when everything went south in March, we were able to cut 33,000 from this year's budget, dropping it from 300,000 to 267,000, which is our total budget. The last quarter that we were able to complete, which was our second quarter, that was last October through December, we had 4,200 guests. So it was an unprecedented year. And one of the things that we proved to ourselves was that this year, first year of Common Ground, which was, as you know, our concept to raise funds and help support ourselves. We had an incredible year. And then in that first year of operation, we had projected 17,500 in revenues, and we've earned $33,000. So that's between special events, rentals, and our programs at Common Ground. A great year. We're not going to have that this year. We just don't have the numbers or the ability to entertain events, large events and groups. So therefore, we've cut our budget by $33,000. We are asking for, we basically cut it to the operation level bone, if you will. We are asking for exactly the same amount of money this year that we did last year, $190,000. Most of that goes straight to operations, as you may know. And we are looking to do more with less. And we've gotten smart about our marketing. We're going to be marketing on shoestring and using Facebook and boosting our posts. We've already started a great program of that on our website, and I would invite everyone to go to haywardhouse.org and hit the videos button. We've got a whole new series of educational videos that talk about the culture and history of Bluffton. Please check it out. I've had talks with Jared Jester at Heritage Peanut Company, who has committed to, as soon as we can get out of this jungle and we can have an event, we are ready to roll out and have the plan and the process in our back pocket to do another boiled peanut festival. And we look forward to doing that if we can this fall. Last year's festival, we drew 588 paid ticket holders, and we tracked zip codes at the gate that showed 232 of those came from outside our local 2 zip code areas. That's 29910 and 29909, which is Coconutty.
Kelly, try to stay on this because I know you'll come back at
Yes.
some other time for that. If you wouldn't mind.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, this was my pared down version. So I just wanted to say that was a 39% visitor ratio in that one special event. So we're hoping we can do that this year. We want to do a special event. But there it is. It is what it is. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, by the way, if I could just very quickly note, today is Katie Epps' 7th anniversary working for the foundation. Shout out to Katie. She does a great job.
She does. She really does. Okay. Any other questions on this second request? It's a request for 190, amount recommended 190. Any other questions of Natalie or Sam or Kelly? Okay. One thing, I'll make a general thought, Kelly. I think it'd be nice not to have a 20-minute presentation, but to have Katie, who used to come every couple of months, to give us those numbers of who's coming in. I think it's always been helpful for council. Just at public comment, she give a 3-minute blurb, who's coming in on your website, who's coming in the door. It really does help throughout the year. Since we're asking our DMO to kind of do it, it would be nice if you could. It wouldn't be a PowerPoint. Is her standing there, or you just giving us numbers and a handout? It'd be really nice, I think, for council and the public to know about.
We would be glad to do that. We do a monthly report that the town gets. I think we'd probably just reiterate the high points of that at your council meeting. Be glad to.
3 minutes or less, that'd be great.
Yes,
Any other thoughts? I will ask if there's a motion to approve the recommendation for the Bluffton Historical Preservation Society for $190,000. All in favor? Oh, there's a motion. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Mayor Salka, I have a discussion point. I believe we've lost Councilman Hamilton, and just because of the vote and an opportunity to ask any additional questions, I want to make sure he can get back into the call.
I don't see, I'm sorry, I don't have everyone up in my screen. I see Larry, Kelly, you, Dan, and Natalie. I don't.
Well, I've scrolled through the list and just sent Kim a text to ask or help Fred get back in. Fred indicates that he's locked out, so
Can we?
Kim's gonna help him. We're all having some internet difficulties today, it seems like.
Okay.
Stay tuned.
Well, he needs to know about the SOBA as well.
Mhm.
Hold on. There's a second and final reading on your, can we move on to the second and final reading? There were no changes on that with Chris, and if he's not here to vote, it just has to be unanimous, right?
Fred's battery died on his laptop, so he's plugging in and calling back in.
And I could call him from, okay, because I could call him
Back.
Oh, he says he's back. There he is. Okay, I'm gonna hang up.
Hey, Fred, we were not doing anything without you. So what I said, if there were no other questions, I said we were at a first and a second, and we were at any discussion on this second item. And I was about to say I will be abstaining, so it'll be the vote of the four of y'all. Are there any other discussion points on this request? All in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And I abstain. Great. Moving on, Natalie, let me get back to where we were on that. We are at Society of Bluffton Artists promoting the arts in the Low Country. Amount requested 16,000, amount recommended 12, and you are getting down to that.
Did it scroll down?
Yeah, scroll down some.
Do you see the chart here?
Yes.
Did my screen? Okay.
That's good. Any questions? Did we have someone here?
Mr. Bill Bogle is here.
Bill Bogle. Are there any questions of Mr. Bogle or Sam, Britt, or Natalie? Okay, if no questions, the recommendation of the committee was 12,000. Is there a motion to approve Society of Bluffton Artists for $12,000?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. I
Thank you very
appreciate
much.
all of you staying on this. You're welcome to stay on the remaining of the town council meeting. It's not that much, but we do appreciate you being here and answering our questions. Next, we're moving on to the second and final reading of the ordinance to authorize the town manager to extend deadline for payment of business license tax renewals until August 7th, 2020, and to waive all late fees assessed on renewals. And this is second and final reading. And were there any changes, Chris, from last month to this month?
No changes, Mayor.
Any other questions of this? If not, is there a motion to authorize the town manager to extend the deadline for payment of business license tax renewals until August 7, 2020, and to waive all late fees assessed on renewals due but not paid between April 30 and August 7th?
So moved.
Bridget, there's a second. Bridget, second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Then we're on to first reading, consideration of an approval of an ordinance to the Town of Bluffton Code of Ordinances, Utilities, Article 4, Small Cell Facilities. We had a workshop on this a couple months ago, and Heather, you are up. And you're muted.
Let me pull up my shared screen here.
Mayor, you do a great job of herding cats.
Y'all are cute cats. Darling little kitty cats.
Does everyone see that? Was I successful this time?
You did good.
Okay. Okay, so this is, like you said, first reading of an ordinance to amend the Town of Bluffton Code of Ordinances, Chapter 28 Utilities to address small wireless facilities in covered areas. We did have a workshop on this item and presented to you the model ordinance with some slight modifications to make it specific to the Town of Bluffton last month, and we have not made any additional changes, or there's been no changes since that point. Just to outline, again, the request is for approval of first reading of the ordinance that addresses these facilities. Again, this is with the recommendation from the Municipal Association of South Carolina to establish the regulation for these facilities. These types of facilities are intended to support the next generation of cellular service, that 5G communications. There's been various federal orders as it relates to how communities address this, which is why we've moved forward with the recommendations, again, from the Municipal Association. Since the workshop, we have also worked with Richardson LaBruce and Terry Finger, the town attorneys, to make sure that everything aligns with the Town of Bluffton and moving forward. This is an example of what one of the facilities could look like. It's a light post with a small antenna on the top, and then you'll see cabinet equipment on the ground there. Again, this is an example of a traffic light with an antenna on the top here. Again, just some more examples of things that are possible. And I can also pull up the ordinance. Like I said, we had that workshop. We have not made any additional changes since then. We're before you for first reading tonight. Should this move forward, it will require a second reading and public hearing. I also want to add that we have had, since that workshop, we have had conversations from 2 providers who were asking whether or not we had ordinances and how to move forward. And they were very accommodating and discussing just very preliminarily moving forward. So, and they've reviewed the ordinance and like I said, had no comments, offered all that information for them at this point. Like I said, they are receptive of moving forward and working with the town. And like I said, I'm happy to pull up the packet as well if you'd like, or just move on with questions.
Yeah, that tells me we should do a pending doctrine on this if somebody's asking, just so we have it tomorrow if somebody knocks on your door, correct? Gary?
And I will say, again, we've had the conversations. Richardson LaBruce was, and we did include him in that preliminary meeting. Since staff, we know we have these ordinances that we're moving forward with, and quite honestly have not had a request similar to this in the past. They are several months away moving forward. But again, that's something we did talk to Richardson to find out his input. But
Terry, can we do this under pending doctrine? And just for Facebook and others, pending doctrine means it goes into effect at first reading. Terry got off mute. Terry?
Yes, Mayor, you could. Typically, it's done from when it's a land development ordinance as much as anything else. You can invoke the ordinance doctrine when you desire. It's certainly it's up to council to do it or not. If there's no pending applications right now, then I'm not sure it's necessary. It's not something we have used a lot in the past, but you're certainly entitled to use it if you desire.
Wonder what if something comes in next week and we didn't do it?
Then there would be second reading on June 9th, and I'd be surprised if anybody was quick enough to go that fast. So it's entirely up to council.
Okay. So that's out there for council if you want to add that on a motion. Are you okay if I read it, that I add it to the motion? Any questions of Heather and thoughts on that?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
It sounds like we ready to make a decision. Heather, is that what you requesting?
She's muting again, but she said yes.
Okay.
Sorry, just give me a moment to unmute. Yes, I'm requesting approval at first reading of the ordinance, and I can stop the presentation and pull up the packet if you'd like.
He's on the phone, Heather.
Okay.
Do you have a place you can look at it, Fred, or did you had it in your packet they sent?
I have it. I have
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Okay. I just don't see that you can be on video, but. Okay. Oh, there he is. He's back. Do y'all want her to pull it up so y'all can see the ordinance again?
No.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Are you opposed to doing this under pending doctrine?
No, I mean, it sounds to me that Terry giving this back to the hands of council, it doesn't say that something that he recommend, in my opinion, but I don't have a problem as long as we legally doing the right thing. I'm good.
The only reason I suggested is that just look at what's happened that's been approved a year or two ago, and people are wanting things to happen, and it may have fallen through the cracks of an approval or whatever. Just thinking ahead, and it's just, who knows? People are staying home. They may decide to put a small cell if they see we pass this on first reading. As long as we can hold them off until second reading, if they do come forward, Terry, I mean, I'm just throwing it out there. Just don't want to have a conversation next month that somebody put an application in next week.
I don't know the extent of the application process for something like this, but I can't imagine it being less than 27 days. So Fred's probably reading me correctly,
Okay.
for lack of a better term.
Well, I sure don't like to say I told you so, but I am the mother hen here, so y'all go. Is there a motion to approve on first reading an ordinance amending Chapter 28 of the Code of Ordinances for the Town of Bluffton Utilities by adopting Article 4 Small Wireless Facilities in Covered Areas?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous. Scott, you're up. First reading. Consideration of an ordinance to amend the Town of Bluffton Code of Ordinances, Chapter 13, Public Property, Article 2, Public Dock Boat.
All right, I will share my screen again, but I promise not to show you my screensaver this time.
Well, I'm glad you have clean pictures. This is first reading the rules pertaining to the use of certain town-operated properties. We had a workshop on this the same time we had the workshop on small cells, I believe, and you're up.
Yes, ma'am. This is just a follow-up from our workshop. Staff took your direction that you gave us in the workshop, and the ordinance that I'm bringing to you tonight as a result of that. Basically, what this ordinance does is it changes the reference to the park at 68 Boundary Street to reflect Martin Family Park, which by resolution earlier you have named that park in honor of the Martin family. It also modifies the rules for that park regarding the use of alcohol on the property. When we had the workshop, council indicated that they wanted to change the strict prohibition of alcohol on that property to alcohol being allowed with the proper permit in place for a special event. So we have made the requisite changes to the ordinance to reflect that. And also some housekeeping measures. We are amending the name of the public park at Buckwalter Place, Multi-County Industrial Park. Currently in our ordinance, it's referred to as Veterans Memorial Park. Staff felt that could be confusing because the Veterans Memorial is just a small portion of that park. And council indicated that at a later date, you may want to consider renting that park. However, the Veterans Memorial Park itself would not be subject to rental. So we wanted to make the change to that name as well. So at the March 17 workshop, your direction was to place the Martin Family Park on the Town of Bluffton master fee schedule in fiscal year 21 and make it a rentable property. So we have included it on the master fee schedule, and we have proposed the same fees that are in use for the Field of Dreams, because that is the closest property similar to Martin Family Park that we have. You also gave us direction to modify the existing strict prohibition of alcohol, which I just covered. And we've changed the wording to reflect that alcohol is allowed in conjunction with the approval of a special events permit. You wanted us to put the public park at Buckwalter Place Multi-County Industrial Park on the Bluffton master fee schedule. And again, the park we have that most closely resembles in features to that park is the Field of Dreams. So we have adopted the Field of Dreams fee schedule for that. Other housekeeping items, as I said, we are changing the name of Park at 68 Boundary Street to Martin Family Park, and we are changing the name of Buckwalter Place Veterans Memorial Park to Public Park at Buckwalter Place Multi-County Industrial Park. Upon your approval of first reading, we'll bring it back to you most likely next month for second and final reading. And then we're also asking, as part of the consolidated budget request, to consider changes to the Town of Bluffton master fee schedule to accommodate your desires as indicated in your March workshop. Are there any questions on the part of council?
Any questions on this? This is a first reading. As long as we don't make too many changes, you have the opportunity between first and second. If you get any input from the public, is everybody okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Council, any questions? If not, is there a move to approve the ordinance to amend the Town of Bluffton Code of Ordinances, Chapter 13, Public Property, Article 2, Public Park, Dock, and Boat, Landing Rules to modify the names and rules pertaining to the use of certain town-operated properties as presented for first reading?
Make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Item 6, Mark is here, ready.
Ready.
Consideration of an ordinance approving the Town of Bluffton fiscal year 2021 proposed consolidated budget, first reading.
Thank you, Mayor Salcom, members of Town Council, and everybody watching. I don't have any photos of scuba diving trips or Halloween pictures, so I apologize. I won't be able to share those, but I am pleased to share with you our fiscal year 21 proposed budget. I'm going to share my screen, kick off the presentation. And so thank you for allowing me and the privilege and honor to present and propose to you fiscal year 21's budget. I'd be remiss to not thank Town Council for your guidance to date, your impact, your input and feedback, as well as our budget team led by Chris Forster and Vicky Isaacs and all the department heads that are on the call and watching tonight. So thank you to everybody. This definitely was a very interesting budget to work through. We had our budget set in February, more or less. We had our revenues understood, our proposed expenditures in our system, and I was working through the budget and trying to make some final decisions on it shortly before many of us moved out of our town facilities and to a remote and mobile location. So since then, we have provided across the board a sensitivity analysis on the budget on how our dollars are raised, our revenues, as well as definitely our expenditures, what those dollars have been spent for in past years and where those trends are. So we've made some decisions internally as a team, as a town manager. I'm proposing those to you tonight. But please know that throughout the budget, we've definitely have done our best to understand the COVID-19 response. Where does that leave us in revenues and where should that bring us in our expenditure proposal? And just like every other year, you'll see a lot of this same information, just a different look for 21. I'll share with you tonight real quick what we've done with the responsiveness planning for COVID and what those economic factors are telling us. We've tried to compare the two as we work through the budget, and then really dive into the budget goals, the overall consolidated budget, and explain to you the review process, tonight being the first kickoff presentation and first reading. So where do I get my information? You know, of course, comparing notes with members of council as well as other managers across the region and state and some of my colleagues. But I always look at the International City County Management Association to provide some guidance. And on the right, the 4 steps for budgeting during a crisis. It's interesting to take a look back at this, where you know, step 1, understand the next 6 to 18 months. So we definitely have checked that box, trying to understand, as folks keep saying, when we return to normal. I think it's a consensus that I'm hearing that perhaps we're not returning to normal. Maybe we're going to return to an abnormal, but as fast as we can, we are trying to return back to reality with a deep understanding of how this global pandemic is affecting us here in Bluffton and South Carolina. And so further steps: reduce spending, find new sources of money, reduce your materials and or your costs, your contractor costs, communicate and engage. And then also, once you all make the decision in 30 days, support your decision making. And so I really like what's on the right-hand side. I've shared that with the senior team, and I think that we're staying on track with that playbook. And so what does Bluffton look like? Of course, we're 54 square miles. I'm over here on the left side of the page. We're 54 square miles. We have about 24,000 folks that we count estimated. This is a great time to plug our census. Please fill out your census. Please be on top of that. I know that our number that we serve is much higher than 24,000 when we think that Beaufort County unincorporated is on the other side of perhaps of the roadway. I think that number close to doubles in terms of our impact. But just in Bluffton alone, that is a 28% increase in population since 15. Our median age climbed slightly. It's 37 years of age. And then you can see these other numbers. I don't need to go through each one of them for time's sake, but a 13% increase in per capita income since 17, 19% increase in household income, a 15% increase in median rent, and 25% in home value. So definitely tracking those numbers, and they affect our budget, they affect our revenues, but they also affect where we're focused our dollars on as I propose budgets to you. And what's interesting right now is we know those that are being hit the hardest by the COVID-19 pandemic are our largest local economic drivers, right? What this doesn't factor in is tourism and our economic development initiatives, but it really tells you where your revenues are coming from and how they affect Bluffton as we look at our business licensing. 13% accommodations and food, 13% healthcare, close to 12% in construction, and 11% retail. And so we continue to benefit from the ongoing economic growth. We maintain our excellent credit position. We just refinanced a bond, and I'll explain a little bit of that to you. But as we refinanced, we maintained the AA1 bond rating and the AA+, both from Moody's and Standard & Poor's. And that is, I'm pleased to say, stronger than the US median bond rating of AA3. And so why is that? You can see that on your screen right here. Tax base, a growing one, very, very prudent fiscal management, a strong financial position, so on and so forth. And so as we dive into the budget a little more, we start trying to understand what our budget goals are. Of course, is to deliver to the community on behalf of town council, the town of Bluffton strategic plan and those action plan priorities. We're definitely a vision and mission-based organization, and you can see on the screen all those different components of our strategic plan, from housing to May River to fiscal sustainability, and so on and so forth. Also set out to continue operating a very lean level, but also to continue the operational improvements. We also know that our budget needs to support our customers and our employees, and that we need to be innovative, especially in this day and age currently in doing so. We continue to have a budget goal, as I proposed to you, investing in infrastructure, and that at the end of the day, we use our budget as a catalyst as we implement change and improvement. And so arguably that's trying to continue to build a resilient Bluffton community. So overall, our budget has 4 funds, and I'll dive into a little bit of this, and I'm going to go through some slides quick and then slow down during the upcoming workshops next week. But we have 4 funds: a general fund, a stormwater utility fund, our capital improvement program fund, and our debt service. Those 4 funds make up our consolidated budget. We operate those 4 funds together as a consolidated budget, but we also operate them separately and individually as we execute operations and projects and whatnot. And you'll see along the way, we do share some funds from one account, really one fund to the other. So this year, I'm pleased to present to you, and you can see on the screen here, the fiscal year 21 proposed budget of a total of $34,223,867. And that's an 8.3% decline from last year. And you can see on the far right column where those are affected, 4% and change difference, but almost an 827,000, or really 826,099 decrease in operating our general fund. Stormwater utility, a 1% increase. CIP, a reduction of close to 23% in requested funds. And then our debt service of 13.6. And that number seems elevated simply because we're utilizing TIF dollars to put into the CIP program. So actually, if you really look at it, what we're doing is a 37,302,000 last year as approved, and a 34 and change request this year. So a difference overall in the budget. Someone, as folks ask, how does COVID affect the town of Bluffton? It affects the town of Bluffton by 8.3%. Where do the revenues come from? You see that the majority of our revenues are property taxes, licensing and permitting, and transfers in. Those transfers in are many different places: A tax, H tax, stormwater utility, fund balance, and some new revenues proposed, which I'll explain. You can see those dollars really here, and we can dive into this tonight if you'd like, but I'd like to share that our numbers on the screen are very conservative. And you see that property tax increase, including all the growth that's going on, we're only contemplating a 2% change. License and permits, well, that's going up. And the obvious question is, well, if we're not going to be as busy, how is that going up? So building permits reduction, a development agreement, fees as a reduction, but we've added I've proposed an addition of some additional revenues through some permit fees for stormwater to offset that. So you can see that. And then on and on, but as you really start getting into the numbers, you can see the reductions in grants. You can see the reductions in intergovernmental transfers and service revenues and so forth. And so all of that really equates to that 8.3, and you can see where those dollars are. It's just a different look at it. And so our expenditures, you see that personnel and benefits, a percentage change of 3%. That includes an additional position requested in January, plus a couple of positions grant dependent. And then you can see across the board almost a 1% reduction in operating. It's really a flat level. Sewer projects, road projects is going up, but those are based on existing CIP. And you can see again, just a different look of expenditures. And so overall, believe the budget is balanced with conservative revenue projections and careful expenditure reductions. And I say that a bunch of times as I'm working on the budget. a very conservative revenue projection, and a very careful expenditure reduction. This is a budget that this year we are going to have to track monthly. We cannot simply just rely upon the traditional cash flows. We definitely need to track payments and timelines and business license renewal dates and make sure that we're tracking appropriately. Property tax millage, of course, remains the same. No surprises there. I have proposed to utilize some millage from debt service this year and transfer to general fund, and I'll explain that. We have a lean operating budget. It expands only in operations on emergency management and public safety. And so holding steady everywhere else. I do believe we all as a staff are doing more, but asking for dollars, the expansion is emergency management and public safety. And of course, the budget continues to invest in public infrastructure. I've proposed 3 different new sources of funding. So new revenue, a stormwater plan review and inspection fee in the stormwater fund. And so that's directly into the stormwater fund with a little bit of dollars transferred out for operating. It also proposes an increase to the stormwater utility fee. And it also proposes a vehicle tag fee of $25 per vehicle that would go directly into the general fund. And we would use that to offset our costs for maintenance of right-of-ways, lighting, traffic enforcement, including the LRTA request. This budget, of course, exceeds the essential levels of fund balance reserves, the 15% emergency reserve and the 25% unassigned reserve. And it greatly exceeds those dollars and those percentages. And it's supportive of the strategic interagency partnerships. And so for all of those that you see on the page here, from Palmetto Breeze, the solicitor, public defender, the USCB programs through our ambassador and water quality lab, 2 different programs and contracts, and all the way down, this budget fully funds those requests and the business that we have traditionally kept. And it also included the annual accommodations tax requests that you've addressed and reviewed tonight with our BHPS Welcome Center, as well as our DMO, our Destination Marketing Organization. And so diving into general fund, how are we using it? It's definitely our operating account. Millage remains the same. You can see that the value of a mill is anticipated to almost be $250,000 this year, $249,071. And you see that the millage, while the overall remains the same, the general fund mill rate moves from 35.3 to 36.8, and the debt service mill drops from 3.2 to 1.7 as a proposed budget. You see the strength of the mill over time. It's such a great graph. It really explains where we've been since 2013, but our mill value has increased by about $100,000 per mill in 7 years. Our general fund revenues are just a smaller sampling of the revenues that I showed you for consolidated, but operating money, operating dollars traditionally and mostly comes from licensing and permitting, as well as property taxes, 49.2% and 33.7% respectively, and then a various percentage of breakdown of others. Different way to look at it, but overall is showing that general fund is a decrease of 4.1% overall. And you can see where those revenues are being generated. Property taxes, licensing, grants, intergovernmental, and so on and so forth. I want to make sure I hit pause for a second, slow down to explain this. And so what we're seeing in the yellow line where my mouse is moving over is our actual revenues throughout the year. So from 17 to 18 and 18 to 19, we simply tracked our actual revenue generation overall in general fund. In the downward decline, or I should say in the upward incline, is where we projected in February, prior to the COVID-19 crisis and pandemic, where we were projecting our revenues to be. And so all of these revenues that I showed you, property taxes, licensing, and permits, we projected those to continue to increase. Based upon our very conservative and I think very realistic revenue projections, we knew that we were going to be impacted down where you see this purple line. And that purple line is a great reduction down, you know, close to $3 million difference, $2.8 million differential from where we were trying to track. So how do we make up that difference? Well, we make up that difference by reducing costs and increasing some revenues. And so that's the big picture look of general fund budget tonight. So you see on the right side, cost reduction proposals. No merit increases whatsoever for staff is what's being proposed and on the table. And again, I appreciate this staff. I admire those folks that have the honor of working with and working for you. But as a sensitivity, through a sensitivity assessment in the budget and some conversations with a lot of my trusted department heads, we're proposing a 0 merit increase this year. And so no cost of living and definitely no merit. I've frozen a couple of open positions. And so the position you asked about earlier for historic preservation senior planner, as well as another position has slipped my mind, but a couple frozen positions. And so what I'm intending to do is leave the FTEs on the table, but come back to you in January or beyond and discuss revenues with you. And if revenues support it, to simply add those positions back to the workforce. I've frozen in and out of state travel. We can all accomplish our continuing education and we can continue to invest in our employees online. And so I know that my 40 or so hours that are needed for my credentialed manager this year, I can take several webinars, including through ICMA, International City Manager, to accomplish that. And so that's what we're proposing in the budget for all of staff. And then no newer replacement vehicles with the exception of the grant position. So revenue enhancements, the $25 tag fee, shifting debt service, partial use of some fund balances and transferring of some dollars from stormwater, especially with some stormwater revenue enhancements, makes up the difference. But our budget is hit by 1.9%, offset by the 9.9 million revenue enhancement. You can see revenue trends over time. You see real property tax, business license. These are our major funds in general fund, but you can see that, you know, the FY20 estimate versus the 21 projected. Property tax will increase, business license a decrease. MASC insurance tax at 2.3 is almost flat a little bit. Same with franchise fees projected as flat, and permits going down a little bit, but keep in mind, permits would go down a whole bunch if we weren't recommending some new permit numbers. And you see the development agreement fees as well. Different way to look at it. Budget expenditures across the general fund, mostly for salaries and operating and benefits. And you can see that the salaries, operating and benefits is listed on this table right here. And so general fund highlights, I won't repeat what I've already said, but the first few points tell you that. What I've mentioned in that earlier slide, we've also continued to allow the PTO payout of 25 hours for employee carrying a 40-hour balance. That's always a nice benefit to an employee in and around Christmas. And so we've provided that prior to Christmas. We've paid for the employee portion benefit for retirement and health insurance at a 1 in 5% increase. And then again, this proposes 3 full-time positions, a full-time nonstop emergency management director. Proposing that position in the budget, it would relieve a captain in the police department from that duty. Please know that our captain isn't working in emergency management full-time the way I believe, especially now with the pandemic and having been through a few hurricanes and evacuations and recovery operations, that I think it's time that this town have a full-time emergency management director. And I've also put in the budget 2 traffic police officers, but those are dependent on a grant. And so we applied for a grant. We should know in October whether we receive it or not. But again, if we wouldn't receive that grant, those positions for the traffic officers would go away. Professional development, I mentioned, employee class and comp study per your strat plan, the waste management contract that's on consent agenda tonight, which is an increase in a significant increase in expenditure. It includes also the reforestation plan installation phase 1. I believe there's $40,000 earmarked for that. And then it supports our Don Ryan Center for Innovation. And I added in here, traditionally, what do they do? Incubation, retention, expansion, Commerce Park oversight and leadership. But I added this year the small business resiliency plan to respond to COVID-19, as you all adopted a few weeks ago. And the general fund simply supports our existing programs. It maintains all of those great programs under Chief Chapman's leadership, the K-9 unit, the task forces, LETC 43, the SROs, all of those. It also puts in the budget $150,000 in year 1 of 2. Fiscal year 21 and 22 are the years that we would truly overhaul our comprehensive plan. And so this budget, as tough as this year was, to support Heather and the comp plan and the overall effort in the town of Bluffton, there's $150,000 for that. It continues to maintain and support the affordable housing initiative. It adds and proposes a new dangerous tree removal program. It adds $10,000 to the base, the 180 base, the 180,000 base. It adds a dangerous tree removal program. And that was a recommendation in my budget discussions with a council member to add that $10,000. So I've proposed it here. The dollars are available. It's not bleeding the existing program, but enhancing and increasing what we're currently doing. And then also it supports the beautification committee plan. And so that's everything for operating. Stormwater utility really is accounts for and reports the financial resource for all stormwater related matters. The overarching goal, as we know, is to sustain the water quality and improve the water quality of the May River and all watersheds. And the primary source of revenue are stormwater utility fees. We've talked a lot about those at strategic plan, and our current single family unit base rate, so the base fee that was established in 2008, about 12 years ago, is $98. And so pre-COVID, post-COVID, pre-COVID, May River Watershed Action Plan made a recommendation to increase the $98 to $150. And the goal of changing that rate was to, of course, generate a surplus revenue that would allow us to build our stormwater projects, our sewer projects, public sewer, lateral connection through grants, and also the water quality restoration projects that we're not yet getting to. It would allow a surplus of revenue so that we could source a public bond and build those projects at a much faster rate. And so that WAPAC committee, Watershed Action Plan Committee, on February 27th made the recommendation to increase to about 150. As I started to look at the budget and speak with council and speak with staff and just think, through my own thoughts, the $150 from 98 would be a drastic, a drastic change to a single family resident or a commercial business. And so what I'm proposing in the budget is not the 150 as recommended at WAPAC a few months ago, but instead a $98 to $115 change. And you can see that change here. I've also suggesting that we implement a national pollutant discharge elimination system, the NPDES fee for stormwater plan reviews and inspections. And so this is allowing our time in stormwater and planning, their time on this extra permit that we have in place and the extra review responsibilities and reporting mechanisms to be paid for by the applicant. And so then I've also recommended that if those two items can be adopted in the budget, we are well established and positioned to issue a $5 million bond for stormwater capital projects. And so how does this affect different different properties. And so you can see the different tiers. And I think it's important to just slow down for a second and show you how the $98 to $115 recommendation affects a home. And we can use a couple case studies. I don't care what we use on here, but less than 2,500 square feet. And again, these are based upon pervious and impervious ratios. And so this doesn't have anything to do with value of home, property tax class. It simply has to do with the perviousness and the subsequent imperviousness of your site. We have this in place through Beaufort County. We have an operating agreement in place and a joint ordinance that was adopted regionally. And so you can see a tier 1, less than 2,500 square feet, the differential between $58.50 and $72.50 is $14. And so this would affect a single family unit less than 21 square feet by $14. It would affect a mobile home. And that's where the sensitivity factor comes for me. A very important look at this is how is this affecting those folks that will struggle to pay for increased fees to generate our revenues. And so a mobile home based on this property description and rate would be affected by $13. So where are we in the region? Beaufort County's at 100, City of Beaufort's at 135, Port Royal's at 60, Hilton Head's at 150, and we've been at 98 for some time. And so while I'm not recommending to bring it all the way up to 150, I'm definitely making a recommendation to generate some additional stormwater revenues for those purposes I've outlined and identified. What does it look like on a tax bill? I always like to show this. It simply shows an additional annual change. And I base this on a median home value, which is our Town of Bluffton median home value, but based upon a tier 2, which is 2522 to 7265 square feet. So that's that 2,500 square foot and up to, and it would affect those homeowners' tax bill by $17. The NPDES plan review fee, you can see the red. The red on here is that we've never had a fee in place. And so I can't compare what we've done, what it currently is, and compare the revenue generated over time. We have not had this plan review fee in place. We have not had a lot of these responsibilities and these extra efforts that we're focused on the way we do today. But you can see on this slide, and I won't go through it, but you can see as an example, what we're proposing is very similar to the City of Charleston's NPDES plan review and inspection fee. Our stormwater utility fees make up most of those dollars. This year, the NPDES fee would generate close to 18% of those dollars. And so here's where this starts, for me, becoming interesting, but two, I would like to point out to council, last year in fiscal year 20, the $98 rate generated 1.3, almost $1.4 million of revenue. We had $65,000 of a grant, and we used fund balance, $576,000 and change of the stormwater utility fund balance. And so of course we can't always keep using that fund balance to generate revenue. We'll soon run out of the fund. But you can see this year that with the change of rate, we increase our revenues by 21.5%. And so from 1.381 to 1.678. And you can see that's almost, really almost a $300,000 impact, positive impact to our budget. And then the NPDES fee generates an extra $365 in our budget. And so you can see that this year compared to last, we're using almost the same amount of money, but what we're not relying upon is grant, and we're not relying upon fund balance to achieve that. It makes our strength of revenue and therefore our position for the public bond much stronger. And it's just more or less the same information. The budget highlights, and I can go into this a little more in the workshop, but what are those dollars paying for and supporting? Definitely supporting the USCB water quality contract and relationship partnership, ditch maintenance and drainage maintenance in the town in conjunction with DOT and Beaufort County. I know that we have a new employee. That employee revenue or that employee's salary is generated out of stormwater. And I know they've been hard at work. Kim Jones and I talked this week, and she let me know that they were out walking Buck Island, Simmonsville, working with private property owners and whatnot. So this budget all supports those initiatives. It supports a water quantity model, and it also provides a replacement vehicle for watershed management that truly is coming out of stormwater. And I know I mentioned no vehicles, but that was general fund. But the vehicle I'm trying to say is in the shop way more than it's on the road. And I know our staff has requested that, and I supported that request in this budget. And most importantly, or as important, there's nothing more important than what we see on our screen right here. The Stormwater Fund budget supports all of these projects. And so the asterisk, the red asterisk, which is a pending bond authorization, puts us in a position to, for the most part, plus or minus some outlier properties, to have 100% of Bluffton resident, 100% on public sewer within a couple of fiscal years, fiscal year 21 included. And so I know Brian is working on, Brian McElwee, our head engineer, director of engineering, is working on an assessment to show me those properties that are those outliers outside of these phases right here, so that we can put a schedule and a budget together to truly understand when 100% of Bluffton would be on public sewer. CIP, and we're going to have a CIP workshop in a week. And so please know that the bigger picture tonight in first reading is that capital project fund is most, any category more than $5,000 with the exception of roads, buildings, and software for computers at over 50. Most of the sources of revenue in CIP are state and federal grants, which will be impacted, hospitality taxes, stormwater fees, accommodations tax fees, and other restricted revenues for CAP projects. And so where does our money come from? The proposed budget of $9.185407 includes that $9.2 million approximate includes whatever dollars that we don't complete this year will roll over into 21. So please know that the fiscal year $20, lots will be complete, but what rolls over really out of that 9.185 is a 4.3 million carryover and new money of 4.9. And those dollars, whether new or carry forward, are clearly identified on the page. And you see that we acquire a lot of dollars from TIF grants. The pending bond is in this number, the 708, stormwater fund and hospitality tax. And then we're also proposing to use some CIP fund balance that has been saved for these types of projects. And so where are those dollars planned? And this shouldn't come as a surprise. This information is no different than what we've worked on in strategic plan. It's just putting some dollar signs to it. But the majority of our projects are sewer, roads, facilities, and then housing. Our housing project, we're excited to get on with that. You see an almost $842,000 housing account there. And then you can see those dollars. Overall, this is so much easier to show on a screen instead of showing up at council and realizing my slide's too small for everybody to see. You can see that the total fiscal year 21 project is 9.185. And so that I'm clear on all these projects, it's always been a challenge in the budget to really highlight and do my best to explain the scope of the project. So this year I broke it down to simply show you all of our capital projects, whether they're existing projects, all of them, with the exception of Boundary Street Streetscape, which is a new project. And so that it's not misleading, I want to make sure I show you all where our dollars are being proposed in fiscal year 21. So the life cycle of a construction project is design, permit, construction, right? More or less broken down that way. So I want to show you that Those projects that will be live in 21 show up on this slide. Buck Island Phase 5, LEC, outside their doors, getting ready for those, for a service yard, as well as planning for the other side of the service yard as well, as we try to recruit more assets to our Commerce Park on our town-owned land. Goethe Schultz Phase 2, Calhoun Street Dock, Oscar Frazier Park, Wright Family, and you can see those community safety cameras, town hall improvements, some residual dollars there, and then watershed management building. We have some issues with some water damage and some improvements needed there. So you can see what's under construction. You can see what's under design, permitting, and construction. So these projects will come out of the gate already live in fiscal year 21. These projects will be starting the design, permitting, construction. I think we can start some design on these early, late this year, but majority next, and then starting construction next. And then you can see where the design and permitting get these projects shovel ready. And so all of these are under construction at some point in 21, and these projects being shovel ready through the design, which would include civil, any agency permitting, and really getting them ready to look for some grants and or fund them in a future fiscal year. And you can see on there, Calhoun Streetscape, I should say, New Riverside Barn, Boundary Street, Bridge Street, the streetscape designs, Oyster Factory Park, getting that design finished and ready, and then also the Phase 5 and 6 sewer. This is a slower look. It's not as an aggressive pace of construction because of COVID. And you saw earlier where I showed you those dollars were affected. Our projects overall, and then debt service, we know we have two sources of debt. One's for the police department, issued in 2010, recently refinanced with a net savings of $59,000 a year. And then we also have our TIF debt that was generated in 05 and 06, and we're paying that down. You can see the principal and interest payments over the fiscal year 21. And then you can also see that we have $8.864 million of outstanding debt between those two bonds. Revenues for TIF, it's easier to show you here, is definitely our TIF district is generating so well for us. Property taxes, as well as some other dollars, municipal improvement development fee and prior year TIF fund balance. And then those budget revenues really get transferred into principal and interest payments, really. So that's paying for principal and interest, as well as transfers out this year to CIP. And you can see here that the revenue generated is off 31.6% because of the refi of the bond and because of the transfer to the general fund millage. We have a healthy fund balance, all inclusive, in excess of $23 million. You can see the general fund, and some of these dollars are encumbered and unencumbered for emergencies and cap projects and different things. But I thought it would be important to you, especially this year, to show you and to show the public that our fund balance remains healthy and strong. And with that, wrapping it up, the consolidated budget proposal of $34,223,867, which is an 8.3% overall decline from last year. And so tonight, we're at first reading. We have a few more steps to go and a lot more time together. You'll see that we've programmed the May 21 and 26 workshops, the June 6th public hearing, second and final reading. And then I'll bring forward in July the strategic plan action agenda and the revised and updated strategic plan based upon whatever you approve in the budget. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Really great report. I hate we don't have it in our book in front of us, Mark, but really good job. We do have two workshops in between, just for Facebook if they're still on. We did meet with you in finance to go through all of this. So we had a lot of questions at that time when we met one-on-one. Are there any questions of Mark? I'll run it down. Dan, anything?
No, Mayor.
Fred, you're up. Anything?
Good job, Mark. No questions.
Bridget, Larry, in the dark.
No, ma'am, I'm good.
Bridget, anything?
No, great presentation. I don't have any questions.
I had two just to, you can go back to or not. One thing I noticed your development agreement fees, Mark, they were at $1 million, but almost dropped by half. Is that what we're starting to see the trend? Is there going to be a day soon where we're not going to have that as a source of real revenue on the development agreement fees? And you can discuss it workshop or now, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, there's definitely a hit. There's definitely a negative impact to development agreement fees in this budget. I'm looking at my consolidated sheet here. It really has to do with COVID-19 and just development slowing down and building permits slowing down, and those are conservative revenues. I don't think we're anywhere near seeing less development agreement fees over time, with the exception of some major impact to the real estate markets, nationally as well as regionally.
Well, I just saw it was like $1.1 million, and then it went, the actual was like 8 something, and then you projected 5. I thought those were standard fees, maybe part of the agreements that were to be paid throughout the term of the agreement.
I see what you're asking. A lot, some of the fees are on an annual basis, but I would say that a lot of the fees, I want to say a majority of the fees are timed at time of activity. So they need to be doing something to generate those dollars. So like we not all development agreements have an annual payment and you pay it. You pay per structure or at time of subdivision depending, and that's how that, and that's why that's factored that way.
Okay. And then the other thing since we talked about this preservation and all these items, that's part of what makes Bluffton is the historic side. And I hate to see you have to put on hold positions. Or those things that you could see you would fill as we get back, even in this budget year, or you're just putting them on hold this whole budget year? And my follow-up is there some way to contract that out if we need it? I just would hate to see that passion of preservation pushed aside.
So I've thought through both of those questions well before today. So the answer to your first question is, I have requested to you all to keep the full-time employee in fiscal year 21's budget, but simply not try to look for and apply some revenue to that salary. I want to come back to you in January and let you know how our revenues are tracking. If our revenues are tracking positively, then I think the most important position of the two, I remember what the second one is. One is a planning and engineering technician site inspector, and the other one is a senior planner for historic preservation. The preservationist is of the two the most important. I will come back to you at the time and say, Mayor, Council, our revenues are exceeding our projections in our budget, and I think through a budget amendment, we should fund this position or these positions. I may even ask you for some additional other expenditures as we go that I've left off the table tonight. So that's the answer to your first question. The second one now, I forget what you asked me.
Just if we have to contract something out, do you have that little bit of funding for certain things that are going to be really important to a lot of people, I think?
Yes, I heard Dan's question asking Heather that earlier about Bailey Bill. I understood the question. We have outsourced a lot of different things that we're doing, especially in planning growth management lately. We have, over the last 6 to 8 months, outsourced at least twice to experts in their field on historic preservation issues, whether that be a new application or a preservation of an existing structure, let alone some of the policy we're trying to write. So we have some dollars this year and potentially next for a little bit of outsourcing, which which is way less than a full-time employee at this point.
Okay, that's all I had. Okay, well, thank you. We look forward to the workshop, which is May 21st, and that's next in a couple of weeks, 9 days. So most likely the same way as we're doing it now. So more to come on that. Next is our consent agenda. Last month, Fred had asked that we pull police off. Are you still wanting that off, Fred?
Yes, and
Wait,
give
I'm
me,
sorry. I'm sorry. We need a motion for the budget.
Oh, shoot. Just
Kim.
checking. Okay, so sorry. There's a first, sorry, Fred. There's a first reading. Is there a motion to consider the ordinance approving the Town of Bluffton fiscal year 2021 proposed consolidated budget?
So moved.
Is there a second?
second.
Any discussion?
Yes, Chris and your staff, I gave Mark all the credit, but I know you and your staff did all the work. So thank you for.
Thank you.
All
We
right.
got Chris on the left and Chris on the right.
And for the record, I gave him all the credit. Yeah.
Yeah,
Fred, for the Councilman Hamlin, for the record, I did give Chris a lot of that. We can go back and watch the tape if we need to.
good job. And Kim, is Kim below you, Dan? Is Kim?
No, Chris is.
Oh, you're pointing to Kim on my screen.
No.
Any other discussion? Great job to everyone. All in favor, state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you, Ms. Chapman, for reminding me of that. Next, we have consent agenda. As I was saying, Fred, you still want the police pulled off? Is there anything off of consent agenda other than the police report? If not, with the exception of Chief Chapman's report, is there a motion to pass these items on consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Chief, you're off. You're off and you're up.
Thank you very much. Let me see if I can get the screen to share.
Make sure we're sharing the right thing.
All right, so if I understand correctly, you guys would like to kind of see a snapshot of how the COVID crisis has affected us over the last month, from a reporting status, calls for service, and those type things. The first thing I'd like to point out in this first slide is if you'll see that our calls for service last month were nearly doubled, about 90% increase. And that was based on us doing the extra patrols to enforce the governor's executive orders. So we nearly had 9,500 calls for service last month. And so you can understand how that taxed our resources and kept us fairly busy. You'll also notice that what we would normally consider proactive policing was probably down considerably. If you look at our traffic citations, everybody was worried about the exposure rates. So that was a trend across the country. You didn't see as many traffic citations, and we were down in that. I'm not going to touch on every slide. If there's something that you see in the report that you want me to cover, I'll be glad to. But what I'm going to try to do is cover the areas that we dealt with during the crisis that we saw an uptick in, or crisis-related issues.
Great. And if anybody has a question of him, are you okay if they stop you at the slide, Chief, and just ask?
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
However you guys want to do it.
That's good.
So these are some of our normal calls for service that we track. What we want to point out is, if you notice domestic violence calls, we've talked about that. They're up tremendously, about 13%, but we're tracking 1 to 2 domestic violence calls nearly every day. And then if you add in what our partners are doing in Beaufort City, Beaufort County, and Hardyville, Port Royal, we're all seeing a considerable uptick in that. And so that's an alarming factor, because domestic violence calls are traditionally the most dangerous calls for law enforcement officers to go on. So anytime we see those upticks, that's concerning. There was an officer killed in another part of the country today answering a domestic violence call. So that's always concerning to us. Overall, our arrests, though, are considerably down. Again, that's just because there's a little bit of a different standard, issuing a lot of citations versus actually physically arresting people. So those numbers are down. Now, this slide tracks what we have to report to the FBI every year for our crime stats. This is where it's determined if we're the first or second safest city in South Carolina. So, we get those a couple times a year, so we're pretty proud of that. But there's 3 or 4 areas that we want to point out that people have taken advantage of our citizens during this crisis. Forgeries and frauds are up about 90%. So there's a lot of scams out there. You guys see the emails from Tommy weekly about the different scams through the email system. We're also getting a lot of phone scams. We're getting a lot of people's debit cards hacked and information stolen out of mailboxes where checks are forged, and fraud is really on the uptick. So we need to be very careful about that and pay attention to that. Our minor assaults, not our felony assaults, but our minor assaults are up about 38%. There's just a lot of people out there with nothing better to do. And there's a lot of arguments that occur. And so we see that up. And our breaking and enterings, we've talked about that also in some of our Facebook Live conversations about how those numbers are up considerably, nearly 100% increase during this crisis. And so we've been encouraging people to lock their cars, remove their valuables out of their cars, don't make themselves a target when they don't need to be. And those numbers are all of those forgeries, frauds, assaults, burglaries, and breaking or enterings are all up. And those are the areas, the domestic violence calls, those other 3 categories there, that's where we're seeing the largest impact. Dan, you pointed out earlier, Councilman Wood, you pointed out earlier the graph that we've been tracking. We're doing a good job of tracking that and trying to communicate with the public of what our numbers truly look like. I got the numbers this afternoon for the zip code for Beaufort County. I mean, we've only had 23 cases reported in the last 14 days. The numbers in our 2 zip codes are looking really, really good. So I think there is light at the end of the tunnel on that. Again, these are, 4 areas that we're tracking specifically due to the COVID crisis, because this is what we're seeing an increase in across the country. Again, domestic violence up about 13 to 14%. Our assault and batteries on the felony level are down, but the misdemeanor level is up. And then look at this 3rd category. This is another area that's very, very concerning for us, and it takes a lot of our time and resources to deal with, and that is the mental subject transports. When we go out on a mental welfare call and we actually have to take that person to the hospital, dedicate that officer to that individual, and then transport him to Charleston or somewhere up in the area around Greenville. I mean, we have officers sometimes spend 8 hours a day on a mental transport, and we had 11 of those last month, and compared to none last year. So that's pretty alarming. Armed robberies, not a huge increase, but we had one, which I believe we have warrants on the subject now. So that's a good thing. And that kind of covers the areas of concern with the crisis. One more slide I do want to point out, I'm sorry, is this calls for service. We spent we had 6,000 calls for service related to the executive orders. That's us checking businesses, doing walkthroughs, making sure they're closed when they're supposed to be closed, or they're socially distancing. And if you think about that, 6,000 calls in a month that's a considerable amount. And again, our calls for service were nearly double last month. And I think we'll see that number go down just a little bit in May, but again, it's going to be increased because we're having to follow up on the ever-changing executive orders that are coming out of Columbia. And so it's a full-time job, but I'll be glad to entertain any questions. But those are the categories and areas that we're concerned with during the COVID crisis.
Chief, on the calls for service, is that you're telling your crew to go make a call? So is that one business, or is it people calling you to say, I don't think they're doing things right? Or is it a little bit of both?
It's us proactively handling calls that come in, people saying, hey, there's kids in the park, go address that. Or there's a musician down at the promenade, or us being proactive, doing our walkthroughs on the businesses and ensuring that everybody's following the guidelines. So it's a combination of both. But a call for service is any call that an officer has to dedicate time to, and we have to track that.
Anything from anyone else? Thank you for doing this. Fred,
Yes, ma'am.
did he get you what you were looking for?
Good job, Chief. It's a great snapshot of where we are and how much the COVID has affected us, and I can see that it's really been a challenge for your department. That many calls for service is alarming, and as well as the fact that your frontline, I guess, position makes you even more vulnerable to be in the public. But I appreciate all that you're doing, and I appreciate this presentation. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Everybody's got a great attitude and has done a wonderful job over the last, I guess we're going into 9 weeks now. And everybody's held up really well, and we've put good protocols and safety procedures in place to take care of everybody.
Well, 326 a day average is a lot, divided by not many officers. So please.
I have a question.
Yes, Bridget. I'm sorry, Bridget, jump in.
As always, thank you, Chief, for everything that you do here in the community, especially as much as you guys have partnered with the Saturday Lunch Bag Initiative and feeding kids. You mentioned that there was an increase in the amount of mental health cases that you had in terms of doing the transport to Charleston. Is there ever any follow-up with those individuals once they return back to the area?
Well,
Curiosity.
it's usually done by the medical staff. Every once in a while, we'll have some sort of follow-up where we have to transport them back to a hearing or something like that. But normally our interaction after that initial delivery service, so to speak, and that escort, we don't have a lot to do with it after that, unless they're a victim of a crime, and that's where Sarah, our victims assistance coordinator, comes in, and she has close contact with them, and she can report back sometimes. But probably 90% of those mental health calls, once they get into the medical system itself and receive the help and are discharged, we're not necessarily involved at any level any longer.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Chief,
Good job, Chief.
Who's?
It's me, Dan. On those break-ins, I'm assuming like the highest percentage of that is just vehicle, and you're not having home intrusions, are you?
Right, and so a burglary is a home, is either a commercial structure, a business, or a home, and a breaking or entering is to a vehicle or a shed. So when we talk about breaking or enterings, we're primarily talking about vehicles. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And you have done a great job. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Anyone else?
Just say thank you, Chief. I think you guys are doing awesome.
Absolutely. Fantastic staff. Like I said, they're coming to work every day and grinding. So they've done a great job over the last 9 weeks.
Keep them healthy.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you for this. And for those watching, this is all on our hyperlink, pretty much the same information under reports from our departments. So that's great. Anything else? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'm hungry.
Second.
And how many times do I hit it? Twice?
Bye, y'all.
We're adjourned.